All right, everyone, we've got work to do today. There's no question about that here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. So I set up this live stream for us to talk about college football scheduling, both a non-conference and mostly the in-conference scheduling based on the videos that I've posted. So I will take phone calls during this time, but they're going to be very quick phone calls. So if you've got a point about college football scheduling, call me. Make your point. We'll move on. We'll get it answered. We'll move on. We'll deal with the discussion and go on from there. So that's what we're doing today is basically I'm going to go through the comments that have been made to these scheduling videos. I'm going to go through the comments. I've got a completely, even though it looks very much the same here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, in regards to the set, it's completely different. So I've had to navigate a lot of things and work out a lot of things for the good of the show that are a challenge right now, but they're going to be an A+ upgrade long term. So we've got all sorts of different keyboards and trackpads and mini-Macs and roadcasters and monitors and all sorts of things that are much different off camera, but everything that you are looking at is, of course, the same. So here's the deal. It's Valentine's Day. Let's start with that. It's Valentine's Day. I hope that you have had a chance today or will later today or maybe last night able to spend time focusing and paying all sorts of crazy attention on your sweetheart, whether that's a significant other, wife, a girlfriend, whether that's a mom or a daughter. So you need to do all those things. So that's a very important thing to do throughout the year, not just here on Valentine's Day or Valentine's weekend. Again, here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, we're focusing on scheduling first and foremost. That's all we are talking about today. So if you want to call in, it's got to be about conference or non-conference scheduling. But I am lining this up because I have wanted people to comment to the videos, and I'm going to go through those comments first and foremost. All right, it's great to see a number of people here in the live chat. And the only exception to the rule today would be is if there's some kind of breaking news out there. If anything happened today that I'm unaware of, because I have been dealing with operational and technical setups for the last 4 to 5 hours. So I've not been locked in on college football and what's been going on, if there's been any items in the news. So keep me up to date on that. Individual contributions will keep this channel going, both your individual contributions and sponsorships. So we appreciate those here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Once again, if you like the content, or even if you don't agree with what I have to say, but you enjoy the conversation, the discussion, the debate, the analysis, which is the very best in college football. Is it every day? No, I never claimed that, but that's the aim. That's the goal. That's the mission. Best discussion, debate, and analysis right here. So we aim to improve that each and every day, thanks to you. All right, so hit the like button. And of course, subscribe. And most of you have subscribed. That way you know that we're going live. And we'll make an announcement about another live stream coming up tonight that's going to be off the beaten path. That's going to be a little bit different, and I will explain at some point. But you're still going to be able to jump in the live chat, talk college football, call in, talk college football. Actually, it would help me tonight, late night, if you would call me on the call-in line to talk college football, because we've got a number of tests to run. So that's going to be a good thing. All right, the lights are a bit close, so we can back off on those. All right, let's get to the comments concerning college football scheduling. Also, keep in mind that we've got a new off-season live stream schedule that was just announced last Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, and you will see me back live tonight. Again, that's not part of the regular schedule, the live tonight. You know what the deal is? Yeah, I need to get rid of that. We may have an audio issue. Sorry, I've not been watching I think we're okay. All right, anyway. My apologies if there was an audio issue. Again, I've been running all sorts of tests, and I've got like 82 wires crossed with 82 other wires, and we've had a bit of an issue, possibly through the first 5 minutes of the live stream, because again, I've got a number of things that I'm testing, and I'm not ready to implement live, but I've had to test. All right. So my apologies if you couldn't hear me because we have the mic hooked up elsewhere and I'm not using the mic because I'm going to take your calls. So hopefully that's good. If not, maybe I'm going to check. I'm going to check the live stream. And if you guys couldn't hear me prior to this, did I have audio issues? Okay, it doesn't look like I did. All right. I was going to say I was going to start a new live stream because most of the people actually watch the live streams after the fact. So the audience that watches afterwards, we might get 200 to 300 of you on live, and then we get a couple thousand on afterwards watching the rewatch. All right, here we go. I'm going to dive into comments made. Again, I hope that you were all able to catch at least one of the conference scheduling videos, and then I released another one this morning dealing with non-conference scheduling. Let me work with my new laptop over here. We're going to look at the comments. And again, I will take your calls. Why is that doing that to me? I'm used to a full trackpad connected to the keyboard, so I'm fumbling around here a little bit. So again, the only conference that I didn't touch on was the Big 12 for obvious reasons. I did not touch the Big 12 scheduling. There's nothing wrong with Big 12 scheduling. And I really wrestled back and forth with having an 8-game conference schedule and a 9 because the 8-game conference schedule would really help non-conference scheduling. But it's ridiculous to have 16 teams, and I'm glad a few of you pointed this out as well. It's ridiculous to have 16 teams in a conference, or 14 teams currently in a conference, and there's talk about 16 teams. We thought we would be there at this point, and having 8 conference games. It's just ridiculous. All right. So again, if you're not familiar with my conference scheduling setup, please check out the videos. I'm not going to go through all that again. So I've got a certain format that I have proposed that I think is pretty airtight, although a number of people have criticisms and comments to make, of course. That's why I'm here, and questions. So I'm not saying that they're perfect. There is, they say that there's always room for improvement. I'll say there's almost always room for improvement. All right. Let's go to the comments that were made to the Big Ten video here. All right, the Big Ten schedule fix. FVCK-ESPN. What could that stand for? Anyway, FVCK-ESPN states here that geography in the Big Ten divisions is perfect. Leave it alone. It's the best thing about the Big Ten right now. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the geography with the Big Ten divisions. And I stated generally, I have had no issue with the divisions for the most part, even though there are a number of people out there that hate the divisions because it doesn't guarantee and often prevents the top 2 teams in the conference of playing in the conference championship game. You may have the best team in the conference in the conference championship game, and then the division winner on the other side is the 4th best team in the conference. And people don't like that. And I understand the complaint there. I didn't really have a huge issue with that. The reason I disbanded the divisions, in addition to what I just stated in terms of the probability that the top 2 teams would not play for a conference championship, is it also ties up the scheduling. It makes it very difficult to achieve what I'm trying to achieve, and that's to create balanced, competitive, equitable scheduling. So FVCK ESPN, and you can follow along on the Big Ten schedule video, says leave alone the divisions. But the reason we got rid of the divisions is, number one, that the two best teams aren't guaranteed to play in the conference championship game. And number two, but more importantly, it ties up scheduling, especially in the SEC and the ACC. And I will explain further. Ruby says, you have a very good point, Mark. Love your show. Thank you, Ruby. Appreciate that. FVCKESPN continues to state about division loyalty, division that he's in favor of. The only people whining about divisions are Michigan fans who can't beat Ohio State. Those are not the only people whining about divisions. There are all sorts of people whining about divisions. Hanzo the Razor. Hanzo the Razor says, I will make a quick point. The college conferences, ACC and SEC, have not gone to a 9-game conference schedule for two major reasons. The major programs want no less than 7 home games, but usually have 8 home games per season. I don't know if they usually do. They many times do have 8 home games in a season, unless they play a neutral site game, or they actually play not necessarily in the SEC. Nobody travels in the SEC, but in other conferences, Enzo, major teams actually travel. Those big stadiums, football operations buildings, indoor practice facilities, academic support buildings, and all the revenue producing sports need money. So say Alabama makes between $10 and $15 million per year. Oh my goodness, this comment lasts forever. I don't know where he's getting $10 to $15 million per year. I don't know if that's accurate. The other ACC, SEC issue is the fact of crossover rivalry games. Georgia, Georgia Tech, Florida, Florida State, Kentucky, Louisville, South Carolina, Clemson. For years, these games messed up the scheduling for most teams in both conferences. They would have to play FCS or Group of 5 team late in the season. Why? Well, anyway, they finally have corrected that problem, and most schools have a game against the Power 5 team and or a Group of 5 team. Now I would just have the other SEC and ACC teams play each other. For example, Auburn, North Carolina, Alabama, Miami, etc. But we all know the Big Ten and the Pac-12 tried this format and found it does not work very well, mainly because of their 9-game conference schedule. In years that a Big Ten team only has 4 conference home games, you can end up playing a road game to a Pac-12 team and end up with 6 or maybe even 7 road games. Okay. If you play a 9-game conference schedule, then there, every other year, you're going to play 4 home games, and you still have 3 non-conference games. And what we can do, the scheduling committee that we formed, the Voice of College Football Scheduling Committee, can rectify this very easily. Very easily. It's not difficult. It takes a little planning. So what I believe Hanzo's getting at is that if the SEC is playing 9 conference games, and let's take Georgia for an example, if they're playing 4 home games in the SEC and 5 road games, then how are they going to get to 7 total games at home? Simple. You make sure that the seasons in which Georgia, for example, in which they're playing 4 home games, they're playing the non-conference games at home. They're playing Georgia Tech every other year at home. So the every other year that they're playing Georgia Tech on the road is the year that Georgia would play the 5 conference games at home. So the years that Georgia's playing 5 home conference games, they're playing Georgia Tech on the road. In the years, every other, that they're playing 4 home conference games, they're playing Georgia Tech at home. I think we solved that. The real reason the Big Ten and the Pac-12 went to 9 conference games was to save on travel expenses. Let's think about that for a second. Saving on travel expenses? Okay. The East and the West and the Big Ten are expansive. We go all the way from Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska on that side of the country, all the way to Rutgers on the East Coast. More than half of the country from east to west is covered by the Big Ten. So by going from 8 conference games to 9, that additional conference game, Hanzo, is a non-division game, meaning that's Rutgers playing Nebraska, Minnesota playing Maryland, those kind of games. All that travel. That did not decrease travel. That increased travel. There. You could definitely go through the Big Ten schedules, and not many of the Big Ten teams are playing national schedules. Ohio State does, Michigan, a few teams play national schedules. Even the likes of Minnesota and Iowa aren't traveling a long distance most of the time, okay, for their other non-conference games. They're staying local. So actually they're traveling more by adding the conference game because that added conference game is a non-division game. All right. The Big 12 did so they could have a conference championship game. The Big 12 needs to expand, and Cincinnati and Central Florida would be perfect. Would they really? Cincinnati and Central Florida would be perfect for the Big 12? If we're going to go to the realignment discussion, actually Texas A&M and Missouri would be perfect for the Big 12. Sound familiar? The Pac-12 needs to expand as well. Both the Pac-12 and the Big 12 have terrible TV packages and do not make half of what the SEC and the Big 10 and the ACC make. All right, you know what? Hanzo, again, partial truths here, partial facts. The Pac-12 doesn't make nearly as much money, yes, as the SEC and the Big 10, but they're not far behind the ACC. The ACC is also, despite having the 14 teams, is distanced quite a bit from the SEC and the Big Ten. They, meaning the ACC, do make more than Notre Dame. The Irish make chump change from their TV deal with NBC. All right. P. Billow is pointing out that Hanzo's home and road game argument is not really applicable in citing Ohio State. All right. Let's move on. Those are all the comments from that particular video about the Big Ten. Also keep in mind that I stated in these conference videos that to test out my theory, to test out, it's more than a theory. I've built out the schedules before. It can be executed. And I'll get to your comments, especially Ballard there. I'll get to them in just a second. I built these schedules out before. So if we get to 10,000 videos, 10,000 views on these videos, then for every video that gets to 10,000 views, I will build out the schedule for that conference or the non-conference schedule. So for the non-conference schedule video that I just posted this morning, if we can get that to 10,000 views, I will put in the work to build the entire college football non-conference schedule as I proposed. All right, let's get to the live chat here. Let's see what you guys are talking about. Probably nothing to do with scheduling. Navy Thomas is wondering, where's Mark at 303? The Rod Farba, thanks for sticking up for me. It's one of my faults in life. There are many. There's not just a few, but there's many, and one is being late. But again, the setup time was more than typically, because I've got all sorts of, I've got a completely new setup going on here that I'm working on. Off with his head. Navy Thomas. He's been putting up with me for 8 years now. Ronan, yes, I am just to be flogged and beaten, tarred and feathered. This free college football talk, absolutely. So again, the phone lines are open, but we're talking scheduling. So respond to the college football scheduling proposals that I've made, please, if you'd like to call in. Both the conference and the out-of-conference videos. Ronan, do you know what's different or not different about the set? The U helmet in the back, Mark knows where his bread is buttered. I don't know, Ronan. Those Michigan videos do better than any. If you look at my ad revenue from view totals, man, Michigan, I'm going to become a Michigan fan. Michigan does better than anybody else, but the Buckeyes are close behind. I'd say Miami's third. How about third place, Ronan? We good with third place? You okay with that? You're probably not good with that. And you shouldn't be because, man, Ronan leads the charge when it comes to Miami support and support for this kid right here. But yeah, I'm gonna say Miami's third, and Miami might be slipping beyond third because some of these LSU video. Oh, Nebraska gets some really good video totals as well. I'm gonna say over the last couple months, maybe since this football season started in 2020, I'm gonna say Michigan videos number 1, Ohio State 2, maybe Nebraska 3, maybe Florida 4, and Miami 5. Miami needs to pick it up a little bit. Sorry, Navy Thomas, no whiteboard. I know I used them. I hope you checked out the videos, Navy Thomas, on the conference scheduling and the non-conference. The non-conference, I didn't use the whiteboard. The whiteboard was in full effect, though, wherever it went. The whiteboard was in full effect for the conference scheduling videos, Navy Thomas. I hope you took note of that. I love breaking out the whiteboard. I would like to get maybe a position here where we could have the whiteboard out all the time. Maybe the whiteboard would be behind this. But you know what? Maybe even though this, I haven't been going with this for too long, what, maybe a year? Maybe the like 250 or 300 bucks that this cost just was not worth it. Just not doing it for me. We need to get rid of that. Jordan says, had a dude seriously ask me why Clemson doesn't play North Carolina and Miami this year and said the ACC was trying to protect Clemson from a loss. Oh, my word. People don't understand what's going on. I had a similar call, Jordan, the other night. Somebody was saying, yeah, the SEC protects Alabama. No, they don't. They don't protect Alabama. You may not be happy that Alabama does not play the good teams in the East enough, but nobody does. This is the stat. Well, there's a ton of stats that I can throw out that just make me just shake my head when it comes to college football scheduling. But this one, okay. Texas A&M and South Carolina are a rivalry according to the SEC. The powers that be that run the SEC, Texas and South Carolina is a rivalry. They have to play every year. Therefore, let's say this format doesn't change. The SEC just continues on with the 14 teams in the same exact scheduling format. In the next 60 years, of course, Texas A&M and South Carolina are going to play every year. Got to play. Texas A&M and South Carolina, they got to play. Kentucky and Mississippi State, they got to play every year. Boston College and Virginia Tech, they just have to play every year. So if we're here 60 years from now, the series over the last 60 years between Kentucky, Mississippi State, Texas A&M and South Carolina, Boston College and Virginia Tech, Ole Miss and Vandy, because they just have to play, they will have played 60 times because they play every year. Over those 60 years, I'm going to be dead and gone. 60 years from now, well, I might be here. 60 years, Alabama and Georgia will have played 10 times. Miami and Clemson would have played 10 times. Auburn and Florida would have played 10 times. Texas A&M and Georgia, 10 times. Texas A&M and Florida, 10 times. Florida State and North Carolina. Clemson and North Carolina, 10 times in the next 60 years. But we need those other matchups 60 times. That's insane. It is so ridiculously stupid. Ronan, a perfect reflection of the current state of my life, and that I'm spending Valentine's Day with Mark Rogers. You could do worse, Ronan. You could do worse. Hey, Ballard. Let's see what you got, Ballard. Jordan telling us that the podcasts and the streams are where real college football experts are nowadays. There you go, Jordan. I'm with you. I just need to get my setup to a place. If I can get through all the hurdles that I need to work on this year with sponsorships, with sales, with marketing, with all this technical equipment I've bought and need to hook up and understand and learn. If I can get through all that, then I'll actually start to be able to keep up with college football again. Okay, let's see. Here we go. CF Kane fan. Is that center field? CF Kane fan. I think college football should use an NFL format where Power 5 teams would play group of 5 teams with an 8-game conference schedule and remaining games with G5 rotation. Okay, let me try to understand this. CF Kane fan, if you're out there, you can call in. You can call in. People are saying, what's the number, Mark? So college football, NFL format, Power 5 teams would play a group of 5 teams with an 8-game conference schedule. Why are Power 5 teams only playing group of 5 teams outside the conference? So the SEC plays its schedule against itself, and then all its non-conference games are against group of 5 teams. I hope I didn't hear that. The 500 what? Where the guy's driving a circle? Okay. Hey, Cheryl, good to see you. Island 5, good to see you as well. Lewis, great to see you again. Lewis, keep in mind, we've got a bet. Lewis and I got a little wager going. You want to let people in the live chat know about that, Lewis?
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Hello?
The call will start.
Oh, okay. Hey, it's Mark. Who's on the line?
Navy Thomas, hey, dude, I waited all day for you today.
All day?
Now, I want to go to this I want to go back to this whiteboard thing.
All right.
I didn't quite type it up what I wanted
Keep
to
talking.
say.
I'm with you. I hear you.
I want you to take. Go ahead, do what you got to do there.
No, I'm listening to you.
What I want you to do is to take the SEC, the ACC, the
Yep.
Big Ten, the Pac-12.
Sure.
Put them all onto the same whiteboard.
Yeah.
Let's have you rank all of the way these teams are doing.
All right.
As conferences.
Oh, all right.
That has been going on for like, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years.
So you're talking about, Navy Thomas, you're talking about you missed my little conference rankings at the end of the season. I used to rank all the conferences.
Right, but I wanted rated about the way this No, man, I'm struggling again.
You want them rated. Like you want me to rank all the teams in the Big Ten, for example?
No, not by teams, just by conference. You tried to point that out the last couple days where you did the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big Ten,
Yeah.
and the ACC.
Yeah.
I just want that entire thing pointed out. You get it quite well when you do it.
I was talking about scheduling. I'm fixing scheduling. The scheduling sucks in college football. That's what we're fixing.
Yeah, exactly. But I want you to do it in the entire system, just like you're doing right as you're right. SEC, Big Ten.
Oh, I'm struggling now, though.
Pac-12.
Oh, I'm struggling now, though.
ACC.
Man, I think the other
But
three.
You got to look at.
Yep.
You got to look at SEC, ACC. They like to play scrub teams towards the end of the season.
Yeah, you don't like that.
Just my point.
Yeah, we're getting.
I just want you go with it because I know you see it. You see it every day, or have been seeing it every day.
Yeah.
So, all right, bro. I'll let you go with it, and I'm always watching. We'll talk to you later.
Appreciate that, Navy Thomas. It's our guy right there, Navy Thomas. I'm going to guarantee that Navy Thomas has been watching longer than anybody that's currently watching out of 34 people. Out of, hopefully we get about 2,000 views on this. We should, something in that range. You know, I know you got a lot of confidence in me, Tom, but I can't decide between those three without doing a little thought. I know those two are the two best. And then the other three are just, wow, they're all over the place. There was a special dispensation for Navy Thomas for not calling about scheduling. So we just allowed that for Navy Thomas, nobody else. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Ballard on today.
Hey, Ballard, I'm good. What's going on?
Not much. I'm not sure if you saw my comment that I put in the live chat a few minutes ago.
Haven't gotten
to
to it yet.
So basically what I was asking, the video you posted earlier, I guess this morning or whatever, that uploaded,
Yep.
You know, your fix for scheduling and everything has everyone playing an equal strength of schedule. And I was just trying to figure that out. Maybe I missed something or whatever. Like, how do we determine if strength of schedule is, equal, I guess, in college football? And I kind of gave an example. Like, is that saying, like, if Alabama, if they get a schedule suitable for them and then Clemson gets a schedule suitable for them as well, is that, how would it work, I guess, in terms of equal strength of schedules?
Okay, so with the conference schedules, I want to make sure that all the rivalries are protected. So all the rivalries are played in a conference. And then my second objective is I want everyone to play a fair schedule. So I gave the example of the 1 year in which Alabama played Tennessee and Kentucky, and they went 1-15 in the conference, and LSU played Georgia and Florida, and they went 14-2. And all their other games were the same. So there's no way, Ballard, to predict how good the teams are going to be that particular season. That's impossible, of course.
Yeah.
That's impossible. But you can come close because teams are generally as good as they were the previous season. So you can build a fair schedule, meaning that everyone in the SEC would play a 500 schedule. So if you added up everybody on Alabama's schedule, it would add up to 500 the season before. And if you added up Auburn, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, everybody would have a 500 schedule in the conference from the year before.
Right. So it's not so much like, okay, let's say Clemson gets all ACC. They get teams like Georgia Tech, NC State, Syracuse, Duke, or whoever. Bama gets all SEC with Kentucky, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, all that. It's more so, like you just mentioned, 500 type teams, not so much as, well, these teams are equal to each other or whatever. It's more so they're playing basically a Power 5, like all Power 5 type of schedule.
Okay, so that's the conference scheduling.
Right.
It's going to be a 500 schedule.
Yeah.
So let's say the SEC. The SEC right now plays an 8-game season.
Mm-hmm.
So if you looked at last season's, in my model, if you looked at the previous season, and Alabama's got 8 opponents, well, they all played 8 games, so that's 64 games. So the composite schedule of Alabama's opponents would be 32-32 next year.
Right.
And Auburn's would be 32-32, and Vanderbilt's would be 32-32. Everybody's would be 32-32, and I'm telling people that this is achievable. It's not difficult to do.
Right.
And you make sure Alabama and Tennessee play, and Alabama and Auburn play, and Florida and Georgia play, and everybody that's supposed to play,
Right.
and then you fill out the rest of it, and you get it to 500. It's not hard. All right, that'd be the first thing.
Yeah.
So the out-of-conference scheduling, I would do the same thing. So let's say the SEC stays with an 8-game conference schedule, so they're going to play 4 non-conference schedules, non-conference games.
For 12 games.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to allow each program to go out and schedule 1 game. Schedule that FCS game to prop up the team in state that needs money, for example. Clemson can play the Citadel, and Penn State can play whoever they want to play to prop them up, give them $1 million, $1.5 million to come to the home stadium and play and lose 55-0. Okay. The other 3 games, if we're going with the 8-game schedule in conference, or it's only 2 games if we go with a 9, my committee would schedule those games. And the formula would be that everybody plays a 500 schedule.
Right.
So, again, we'll take Alabama, for example. They only get to schedule 1 game. So the schools don't get to run around and schedule their own games anymore because that's not fair. So Alabama's playing 3 teams, 3 Power 5 teams from the previous season. So that's 36 games, correct? That those teams played the year before. Their record's going to add up to 18-18. And so is everybody else in the country. So it's going to be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definitely would make sense. And I remember, and I don't know if this is what motivated you to do this, but you remember when Nick Saban had a press conference a few years ago, and he said, "Why don't you start calling around to see if you can get better teams to play us, and we'll play them." Like, Bama plays, like, every year I notice the scheduling. Okay, they open up with a non-conference Power 5 team in a kickoff game.
Yep.
They play everyone in the division. They get an extra East opponent along with Tennessee. And they always get, and then fill in a couple, so 8 games in the SEC play, you still got 4 games. I just mentioned a non-conference Power 5 opponent to open it up. That still leaves you with 3 games, and they always schedule cupcakes. Well, when you think Alabama wants to play the Citadel, Mercer, or, who do they play? Western Carolina a couple years ago. Nick Saban said in a press conference, and you've probably heard this a few years ago, he was like going off on the media and went on a little rant, and he said, why don't you start calling around to see if you can get better teams to play us, and we'll play them. They're trying to get the best teams they can, and, obviously they can do better at scheduling in non-conference play and schedule more, like, teams that are a little bit more, like you said, 500 or better. And, I really like how you tried to fix the scheduling this weekend, sir.
Well, I appreciate that. That wasn't, and I remember his comments about playing 9 conference games and also playing better non-conference schedules. I do remember all that, but no, I thought of this a long time before that. One of the key moments in me coming up with this was, again, going back to, this was in 2013 that I'm looking at the SEC schedule and I see, okay, and this is when, and this really doesn't matter, but this is when Alabama and LSU were only a year removed from playing in the national championship game against each other, and that was, the big game in the conference. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, these two teams play each other, and they play the other 5 teams in the division. So there's 6 games out of 8 that are exactly the same. Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
But the other 2 games, Alabama's going to be playing 2 teams that went 1-15 last year, and LSU is going to play 2 teams that went 14-2 last year in the SEC. How is that fair? So that was one, and that's not like, I can come up with examples like that every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all over the place. And then the other thing that you may have heard that I pointed out several minutes ago was that, just think about, even if the SEC stayed with divisions, I would have no issue with the SEC, again, protecting Tennessee, Alabama as the cross division, Georgia, Auburn, and a lot of people see LSU and Florida as a rivalry. I don't necessarily, but I'm fine with that. That's fine. It's a great game. It's a great matchup. But why do South Carolina and Texas A&M have to play every year? Why do the other teams have to have these fake rivalries? Ole Miss and Vandy, Mississippi State and Kentucky. They don't make any sense.
Yeah.
So what you're going to get, and I just throw the number of years at 60 out, that if nothing changes in the SEC, really, is it going to make sense that over the next 60 years that Texas A&M and South Carolina would have played every year 60 times, and Alabama and Georgia are only going to play 10 times in 60 years?
None of that makes any sense, because, I mean, you got to think about significance of games. Now, I don't know. I made a video over the summer, and I don't think it's a rivalry, but there's definitely a whole lot of talk going around. As you know, I mean, it's Kirby Smart looks like the guy to be the first Saban assistant to beat him. He's come so close. Georgia in the SEC. There's Bama. We know about Georgia and Bama. Them playing every year, every other year, whatever. At this point, just gives us some quality entertainment. But I mean, if a team like Auburn, let's say they played, I know they're cross division rival is Georgia, but let's say it was Vandy or whatever.
Yeah.
How would that? And no one's going to want to. That's a cross division game that's every year. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, there's, on your board you said eliminate the fake rivalries. What's the significance of Vandy and Auburn? Like, really? Well, I mean, there's just certain games that just don't make sense. I mean, sure, it might be a football game. It's an SEC matchup, or maybe if you want to go to like the Big Ten or whatever, it's a good matchup. But for it to be an every year thing, some games just don't make sense.
Well, it's not that they don't make sense. Every team and every matchup in every conference should be played at some point, but it's not. It doesn't make sense from the standpoint that these games need to be protected so that they're played every year.
Yeah.
There's no connection between Texas A&M and South Carolina. They have no connection whatsoever. Why are they playing every year? Poor Auburn and LSU, they play Georgia and Florida every year. So when their rotation comes up on another tough team, like I think it was Auburn last year, 2019, they played Georgia and Florida. LSU's always playing, of course, Florida. So the year that they come up and have to play Georgia, then that's a tough setup for them.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, there's obviously better ways to handle, how the SEC, maybe even the ACC, although I mean that's still Clemson and everybody else. But I mean, scheduling could be a little better.
It's the same in the ACC. The ACC does exactly the same thing, and it makes no sense.
Yeah.
The Florida
I
State,
noticed that.
the Florida State Miami, sure, fine, that makes sense. Make sure that they play every year. North Carolina State, yes, but the rest of them don't make sense. Boston College and Virginia Tech have to play every year. Why?
Right.
They did
Duke
this.
and Syracuse.
They did the same thing as the SEC. They matched up. They thought everybody has to have this designated rival. Why? They don't.
Yeah.
And they're basically tying up the schedule, and it forces these other games to only be played once every 6 years.
Right.
So Georgia's only going to visit Alabama. They just came this year. Well, it might get thrown off because of the COVID year where there was the 10-game season, but under normal circumstances, Georgia just visited Tuscaloosa this year in 2020. They're not coming back until 2032. They're not coming back for 12 years.
Right. And Alabama now, do they go to Athens in a few years? I'm really not sure, but I mean, even still, like,
well, it's going to be 6 years from now.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is they schedule these so far in advance. Like, they already got games lined up for like 2035 or something like that. I mean, they just haven't released it. I'm sure they got it in mind. And you're playing, like you just mentioned, Bama and Georgia, they play maybe in regular season every 6-7 years. And that's about it, you know. But anyway, I'll let you go, Mark. I appreciate you taking my call. There's definitely better ways we could do scheduling, but I love the videos you put out on each conference, and keep up the great work with the content. We really do appreciate you for what you do for us football fans.
Appreciate that, Ballard. You have a good day.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the call.
You too. Thank you.
All right, the Rod Favre, very knowledgeable, typically, but you understand Brian Kelly didn't win the conference. He made the conference championship. Then I see Ronan and Jordan picked up on that. Okay. John, we appreciate you encouraging everyone to hit the like. So my thought process is, even if you don't agree with me, you're here, you like the chat, we debate college football every day here, please hit the like button. So basically the combination of the number of views in a video, how long people watch the video, and the number of likes will get it into the high traffic suggested videos section. That's where we want our videos to go. Because when you see videos on my channel, and you see they get 500 views, that means basically all of you guys are watching the video and nobody else is. It's called click-through rate. But then you see other videos go to 10,000, 15,000 views. Well, that means it hit something in YouTube where it got cranked up and they threw it in suggested videos, and they threw it in front of people, and college football fans could find it and watched it. Okay, the Rod Favre. Again, there were no divisions in the ACC this year. Brian Kelly did not win anything except for individual football games. And again, I've got to admit, with a lot of this stuff, I'm not saying I got the perfect plan or it's always... See, the one problem with scheduling is you don't know how good the teams are going to be this year. You can only make it fair based on... See, we can do two things there. We can make it fair based on last season's standings, building a 500 schedule for everyone. I hope everybody understands what I say, a 500 schedule. That means if you take any team in the country under my system, you take any team in the country, I don't care if they're Kansas, they're Alabama, good, bad. I'm not here to prop up bad teams and give them a weak schedule and try to push down the elites and give them a tough schedule. Why? Why would we do that? No, we're big boys and girls here, and we're going to play big boy football and make everybody play the same level of schedule. Okay, to finish my point while I'm taking this call is that the only unfortunate thing in all this is that there's no way to know how good the teams are going to be that particular season. That's the only way to make it fair, but you can't do that until you actually play the season to know how good the teams are going to be. But what you can do is build at least the schedule to be fair based on the previous season's results. And then if you get a smart committee together, they can kind of work with the numbers and see where, yeah, that 6-6 team is kind of trending up. They're usually better. Like, perfect example, Michigan State in 2016, after the playoff season and after going to Rose Bowls and Cotton Bowls and being a really good program, went 3-9 in 2016. So under my formula, they would have to be treated like a 3-9 team on somebody else's schedule, but it could be understood, okay, it's Michigan State. They're better than 3-9, and so we can match them with a weaker 9-3 team, if you follow me there. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. Reasonable Gruff here. How you doing today?
I'm good. What's going on?
Hey, let's talk. Let's talk some scheduling.
All right.
Because this is one of my favorite topics too.
Oh, it's mine as well. Here we go.
So let's deal with the here and now first before we start delving into your much superior plans, because I don't think either of us actually believe that we're going to start, doing away with divisions and taking away scheduling from the school's hands.
Yeah.
So something that everyone, a lot of people are clamoring for, including some coaches in the SEC, are that the SEC starts playing, starts getting with the 21st century and playing 9 games, conference games.
Yep.
So, I am a big supporter of this, but I'm just going to play a little devil's advocate here.
Yep.
And instead of Alabama, I'm going to use Auburn as an example.
Okay.
Auburn every year has to play Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, and Georgia.
Yep.
3 of those teams have been to the national championship in the last 4 or 5 years. 2 of them have won it multiple times.
Yeah.
Well, one of them multiple times. So if I'm Auburn and I'm sitting over here and I'm playing all 4 of these guys every single year, why in the world are you telling me to not only go out and play another SEC game or go out and do better with scheduling a big-time non-con opponent? Like, why in the world do I need to add Texas or Ohio State or Clemson to my schedule? I'm acting like I'm Auburn here.
Sure.
My schedule's already harder than yours every single year. No one else has to do what Auburn does. Even with 8 conference games, their schedule's already harder than everyone else's. So why is it imperative that they try to make life even more difficult for themselves by scheduling a big out-of-conference game?
Who's they? Who's making them do this? Who are you talking about? Talking about me?
Well, no, it's making. But come on, everyone, particularly Big Ten people, like to rag on the SEC for scheduling FCS opponents. Not playing enough conference games.
Well, see, I'm not that person because I don't have an issue with. This is the only issue I have with the SEC, and it's not the entire conference, but it's a larger portion of the conference than any other conference. They don't travel. They don't like to travel. There's little traveling in the SEC. They don't like to go anywhere. There's less travel from the SEC than any other conference. I guarantee it.
Right. I'm not disputing that.
And that's my
I wasn't
only.
expecting that response, but
Oh yeah, it's the best conference, and generally, I don't think that the other conferences schedule more difficult out of conference games. Like if you take the entire SEC versus the entire any other conference, I don't think it's not like the SEC is full of a bunch of Baylors that schedule no one. I'm going to pick on Baylor throughout this process as much as I possibly can because they are the poster child for scheduling the Sisters of the Poor constantly. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. So I won't jump on the SEC for that. And actually, to Auburn's credit, it's not like they've said, yeah, we play such a tough schedule. We're not going to go out and play anyone. No, they've scheduled Clemson. They got Penn State this year. They go out and play teams. And they're actually going to Penn State, I think.
There's been plenty of people on your show who always make knows the con about SEC teams schedule cupcake games before a rivalry week. They play FCS opponents, and the Big Ten does that and stuff. I'm just sitting here like, well, first of all, FCS opponents, most of them are no different than playing an FBS or a Group of Five opponent to these schools you're talking about. You know, but Alabama playing an FCS opponent is no different than playing Southern Miss. You know, it's an automatic win, pretty much.
You don't think it's
so?
Alabama's an outlier. You don't think it's different if Auburn plays? You know, Auburn had a pretty decent game with Tulane last year. Not this, maybe this past season. Obviously, not this past season, but in 2019, Tulane gave them a pretty good run. You don't think that's different than Auburn playing the Citadel?
It may be, but it doesn't hold up because if Auburn had scheduled Tulane instead of the Citadel, or they scheduled a team comparable to Tulane, it's not like they're going to get credit for it. No one's going to give you credit. No one would even give you credit for beating, you know, Central Florida a few years ago. It's one of those, we have nothing to win, but everything to lose. So when people are saying, when people are getting onto the SEC for scheduling FCS opponent, I could be like, okay, what if I nullify that and I say they're only going to schedule a Group of Five? Your opinion of them is not going to be raised at all.
Well, it depends
You're still going to make fun of
is.
them for not. So
if they were playing a bunch of
Boise,
if they were playing a bunch of Boise State UCF games, I think that would change. There's only so many of those teams. Everybody can't play Boise State and UCF. But to your point, yeah, the SEC gets picked on for playing these FCS November games. I don't really care about that. That doesn't really bother me because it's not like they're going to play the playoff the next week. They're playing each other, so the cushy game, the scrimmage that Alabama gets the week before Auburn, based on every time I've looked at this, they make sure that the other team gets it as well.
At the same time, right?
Yeah. So I have no issue with that. I don't think that's affecting, you know, I've heard ridiculous claims that affects the playoff, like Alabama playing the Citadel or Auburn playing Tennessee Chattanooga or whomever, fill in the blank, Georgia, playing a cushy November 20th games, affecting that they're fresher more than a month later playing a college football playoff game. Well, that's stupid.
I mean, I agree. And I guess what I'm really kind of getting at here is that, so now I've used Auburn. I'll go back to Alabama because let's be clear, or let's just be real, they're the one that gets picked on the most. Not without good reason. And I hated Duke and Louisville on the schedule. I was adamant about that to me was worse than just scheduling 4 Group of 5 teams.
Yep.
I would rather just schedule 4 Group of 5 teams and own it. Don't schedule Louisville and Duke and pretend like you're trying to beat your schedule up with a non-con Power 5 opponent. It was like that time Ohio State played like Oregon State. It was like a 2-win team, or like 1-11 the previous year.
Yeah.
You know, there is no credit at all for that.
No.
So I hated that. But at the same time, I'm on those years, I'm looking around and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, our out-of-conference schedule is garbage, but I think Alabama playing in the SEC West and playing all of those games, LSU, Auburn, Texas A&M, we didn't manage to draw Georgia or Florida either of those years, but even so, I think it still balanced it out with, you know, their competition with like their schedule compared to the likes of Oklahoma or Ohio State. I mean, everyone's schedule is better than Clemson, but so it's like it's hard for me to feel that bad about it when it's like the SEC, everyone wants them to schedule 9 games, including myself, but I understand their argument when they're like, look, our schedule's already hard enough as it is with 8 games. Why in the world are we going to make our life more difficult just so you feel better?
All right.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and it's truth, but at the same time, if the SEC, if they stuck to their guns, and I'm not saying they're trying to do this, but let's say the SEC did take a stance and say, you know what, we're just going to state it. We're the best conference. Therefore, even if we play 4 lightweights in the non-conference, we're still playing tougher overall schedules. Therefore, we're going to stop playing anybody in the Power 5. We're tough enough, we're good enough, and we've tested each other. Well, that would still not be the right thing to do, because it would be impossible to evaluate the conference against everybody else if they didn't play anybody else. If there were no legitimate quality non-conference games for the SEC to play, we couldn't rate the conference, evaluate the conference properly.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the main reason I would be in favor of all of this being equal. But I'm just saying, a lot of that gets kind of either forgotten about, or maybe just neglected to be mentioned. That even with only 8 games and a tendency to schedule FCS teams, it's hard to find a lot more schedules outside the SEC that are tougher. No, kudos to that. I think it was last year, Ohio State. Last year or the year before, they scheduled 2. Power 5 games, so they ended up playing 11 Power 5 and 1 Group of 5.
Yeah,
that's really good. But I just think when you start weighing a lot of those Power 5 teams that were marginal 6-6 or 7-5 caliber, or even worse, against some of these schedules in the SEC, I don't think they came out either ahead, or if they did, not by all that much.
Ohio State has some schedules coming. I was just going to say, Ohio State's got some schedules coming up where they overlap Washington, Notre Dame, Texas, and have 2 of them on the same schedule a couple times. Like they're playing Texas and Washington the same year, or Notre Dame, and I forget what. It's 2 of those 3.
Okay, and then if that happened in the Big Ten, and let's pretend, or not pretend, but forecast, Indiana keeps on their, high right now. They start turning into a real football program. Let's say Michigan actually plays to its talent level, which it hasn't done in decades. And so the Big Ten is also, the Ohio State Big Ten schedule is also respectable at that point. Then the argument would, of course, be valid. If you've got a beefy conference schedule and you've gone and scheduled 2 first-class teams out of the other Power 5, that would be, if a team could run through that undefeated, that would be something to behold right there. But that's not the norm. We've almost never seen something like that. I think Alabama's schedule this year is one of the hardest anyone's ever done in college football. LSU might have an argument because their schedule last year was ridiculously hard.
You're talking about against the 10 teams in the SEC. Is what you're talking about.
A 10-game SEC schedule is hard to argue with that.
Well, yeah, but that's the complete aberration.
Between.
Well, that's a complete aberration that we hope we never see again because of the conditions.
To be honest, Mark, I kind of liked it. I was kind of hoping that they might consider doing it again, and even with it.
Well, I would like it if they would go out and play 2 Power 5 teams from the other conferences. Sure, they can go ahead and play 10 conference games if they want to. But I also want to see this Alabama-Ohio State series or the Auburn, Washington, and Oregon games, and we have to have those games.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's move on to the scheduling fixes that you put out. Again, I'm just going to stick in the SEC because this is what I know best. But so we're talking about protecting traditional games,
yes.
Rivalries.
Yeah.
So Auburn actually had 2 of theirs cut from them when the SEC split up into divisions and started this, one cross-divisional rivalry thing.
Okay.
Auburn and Florida, as you mentioned, used to have a decent rivalry. Yep. A lot of people forget about that, but they did. Yep. Auburn and Tennessee actually had a decent rivalry as well. So in an ideal world, if we want to do this, Auburn's going to have 5 games Alabama also has 5 games that ideally we would need to play every year. Obviously, they have each other. They both have Tennessee, LSU, and then Auburn would have Georgia and Florida, whereas Alabama also has Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
Well, it's got to be
there's
logistically
obviously a
possible.
disparity between the difficulty of those permanent games.
Well, yeah, it's got to be logistically possible. You can't.
The problem I'm seeing with Auburn is
Yep.
they would have 4. It's a similar situation as what I brought up in the beginning. They would have 4 really first class programs that they're going to play every year: Alabama, LSU, Georgia, and Florida. And so it's going to leave it very little wiggle room when you start rotating the rest of their games, because they're understandably going to be like, look, don't start rotating like Texas A&M over to us basically ever, because they're playing LSU, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida every single year. So with Auburn, you basically just be rotating the bottom programs into them.
Maybe.
So it would be kind of difficult with doing something like that.
If they really have to play those. So they've gone how many years without playing Florida on a regular basis every year in Tennessee? Are those really rivalries?
They were, yes, before the divisions became a
Okay.
thing.
That was
Auburn
29
really did
years.
there.
Sure, that was 29 years ago now. Do we have to protect all those games? Because I don't know that, there's practicality versus protecting every little rivalry that we can think of. Ohio State and Illinois play for the Illibuck, a turtle. Does this game have to be protected every year?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when two
not
teams
necessarily. I'm just
when two teams
I'm just
participate in a
spitballing
conference forever, then there are all sorts of quote unquote rivalries out there. But it also has to be logistically possible. And
what's funny is if you went out and asked a bunch of Georgia fans who their biggest rivalry was, it's I've actually done this, and a lot of them say Alabama, which is strange because they've never been a quote-unquote rival.
Yeah.
So they may want Alabama every year. And Alabama really just has Tennessee and Auburn, LSU, obviously, but they also have they have a name, at least for the Mississippi State rival, and then the Ole Miss kind of, sort of, not really. So I guess I'm just trying to envision how this would happen. Or do we need to set a number of how many games permanent games get protected? Does everyone have to have the same amount?
No. Who does Mississippi State have to play besides Ole Miss? Do they have to play Alabama? Just because they're an hour away? I don't know. I don't have the answer to every rivalry question. That's why there are smart people, hopefully smart people in each conference that know the conference and the fabric of the conference to be able to make that determination. But not everybody has to have the same exact number of protected games. I just want the games that are meaningful protected every year.
Meaningful in the sense that it's competitive,
no. But
if you went to Starkville or if you went to Tuscaloosa or anywhere in between, they would, and you started asking them to name all the rivals, they would probably eventually get there. Yeah.
Eventually we get there. Yeah. I just think, again, I made a statement with this statistic. It's not a statistic, it's just fact, that if the SEC stays with this scheduling format, I just think if people would let this sink in, that Texas A&M and South Carolina are going to play for the next 60 years. 60 times, they're going to play every year, and Alabama and Georgia are going to play 10 times in the next 60 years.
Oh, it's absolutely insane, yes. There's no question that it's just completely ridiculous. I mean, I feel bad. I mean, I guess I'm not sure if anyone besides you or me cares about this, but I feel bad that players recruited or that will start their freshman season, not this upcoming year, but the year after, they will never play Florida, ever. They will never go there, and Florida will never come here. I'm talking about Alabama. But they will players whose freshman year at Alabama is in 2022 will never play Florida.
Yeah.
Because they're 5 years. They will be 6 years away, and they only have 5 years of eligibility. I mean, barring some, one of those, few and far in between circumstance or some sort of injury or family thing happens and they end up getting pushed an extra year back. Barring something like that, they will never play Florida, which is just ridiculous. So that's a conference opponent, and not only that, it's a big conference opponent.
Mm-hmm.
It's a traditional conference opponent,
sure.
And there's nothing they can do about it. So I just think the very thought of that is just ridiculous, and I can't believe when they added Texas A&M and Missouri, which I still don't know why they did that, but when they did that they did not foresee this kind of problem happening. Or maybe they did and they don't consider it a problem.
I guess not. I think, again, the COVID 10-game year is going to kind of break this up. But as you well know and are basically pointing out, and I'll just extend the point, that Georgia just visited Tuscaloosa this year, and they'll be back in 2032. So 12 years from now, two teams in the same conference, they will not visit that stadium for 12 years.
And the only reason I didn't say any freshmen starting next year will never play Georgia is because they likely will in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But that should be notwithstanding, because that's the exception.
Yeah.
Not the rule.
Sure. I hear you. I thought there was something noted in one of the. Old Grim is asking about travel. Does the school plan for travel? How are the schools going to plan for travel? See, this is a crazy thing that comes up. I think this COVID year proved teams can travel within 48-hour notice and get somewhere and play.
Yeah, that is not an issue.
We don't need 10 years to plan games. They get planned during the off season and scheduled very easily.
I mean, I can't speak for any other schools, but I can say from personal experience, having flown on one of these, that there's a small little airport in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that basically caters to anyone needing to travel with the football team.
Yeah, I bet it does.
So it's not an issue to get if you got to get on a plane and go
That's the most important business in that state. Sure.
Did you know one little piece of trivia question here before I get off? Did you know that the state of Alabama a long time ago used to have it in their clause that if all of the governing officials somehow died for whatever known reason, the next in line to run the state would be the head coach of Alabama? I'm not kidding.
That's great.
That was a real thing.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. And of course, he's taking a demotion.
But I don't think it's not a thing anymore. Anyway, all right, man. That's all I got for today.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Scheduling. Okay. I'm trying to understand this comment that I just posted on the screen from number one ND fan. Regular season conference titles are more important than winning a meaningless game. Okay. This statement would hold true if we were talking about college basketball, where it could be argued, and I think successfully, and it makes sense, that if you win the regular season playing 14, 16, 18 conference games, that your regular season conference championship should mean more than being the best team in a tournament over the weekend that gets that automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. I've also always thought that was stupid. I always thought it was exciting that you could be 6-18 and win your conference tournament and go to the NCAA tournament in basketball. But if we're talking about football, which we tend to talk a little more football than basketball on this channel, I don't know. I'll have to run the numbers. Regular season conference titles. Regular season conference titles. There are no regular season conference titles. That does not exist And outside the Big 12 has not existed in college football for a long time, for a decade or more. So there was no such thing as a regular season conference title. And when that did exist, that was the conference title. So how do you have a regular season conference title now? That doesn't exist. Number one ND fan. People are so upset Notre Dame takes a harder route. Imagine how many more natty title college football playoff appearances Notre Dame would have if they played a conference schedule. Really? Okay. College football playoff appearances. Okay. Notre Dame's made 2. And one in which they lost a conference championship game by 24 points. So let's all understand that Notre Dame is the only team that's made a college football playoff appearance after losing a conference championship game, number 1, and then losing that game by 24 points. A game they could have lost by 50 points. Clemson had 31 points on the board in the third quarter. It's 31-3 in the third quarter. Clemson pretty much just, okay, we're good. Okay, that coming out of my mouth, that's even more ridiculous than it was processing through my head before I spit it out. That Notre Dame made a college football playoff, losing a conference championship game. So nobody else has done that. So think of all the teams that lost conference championship games. Wisconsin in 2017 lost a conference championship game by 6 points, by 1 touchdown, 6 points, 27-21. To a top 3 team in the nation, Ohio State. Well, they finished in the top 3 after they won. Anyway, top 5 team in the nation. And finished 13-1 and missed the playoff. But Notre Dame was invited to the playoff. I'm not going to say they earned it necessarily, but they were invited to the playoff after losing a conference championship game by not just losing a conference championship game, but by 24 points. That they could have lost by 50. All right. I am trying to, somewhere in the upper regions of whatever brain cells I do have, I'm trying to configure a situation in which Notre Dame would have been better off with an easier route during this college football playoff era, and would have played in the college football playoff these other years. That 2012 Notre Dame team that made it to the BCS championship game and got trucked, where were they going to go play in a conference and win? I don't see it. I don't see it. And then all the teams after that lost basically 3 games a year. They had a good team in 2015. But man, if you can't beat Stanford, and who else did they lose to that year? They lost to Stanford. Or was it Notre Dame that beat Stanford and knocked them out? I always get this confused because Stanford in 2015 and Notre Dame in 2015 both came that close to making the playoff. But one of them beat the other. And I can't remember. They both finished 11-2. And they played a really close game at the end of the year. Somebody's going to help me out on this. And one of them beat the other on a last-second field goal to knock the other one out of the playoff. But they both finished with really good seasons. Although that great Notre Dame team that apparently would have made the playoff under different conditions, they got pretty much handled by Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl, a team that didn't make the playoff. So I'm not really following that logic. Florida, Georgia might be the closest rivalry right now. Florida leads this century 13-8. Really? That's the closest rivalry we can come up with? Washington, Oregon? Hasn't Texas and Oklahoma been a little bit closer than that this century? Is Florida State Clemson a rivalry? Well, that's been closer, right? 13-8, relatively close, but still, that's a pretty good lead. 13-8, you're winning more than 60% of the games. Michigan State, I think they've split the last 6. Michigan State, I'm going with that one, closest rivalry. How about, Minnesota, Wisconsin's not been close. Wisconsin has dominated Minnesota, but Wisconsin, Iowa, Iowa State. Iowa usually wins that game, although Iowa State's obviously coming on as a program. But Iowa generally wins 6 or 7 out of every 10 against Iowa State. Oklahoma kills Oklahoma State. They've got a huge lead in that series, and even recently, USC over UCLA, Oregon over Oregon State, if you're looking at in-state rivalries. But, yeah, I would say Michigan State, and Wisconsin, Iowa would be 2 that come to mind that would be close as well. Of course, South Carolina beat Clemson. Clemson fans really love dogging on South Carolina, but it wasn't that long ago. South Carolina won 5 straight in that series. Now South Carolina has lost 6 straight, right? Is it 6? Must be 2014 through 20. Maybe it's 7 now. Or they didn't play this year. So maybe it's still 6. Daniel likes 8 conference games, 4 non-conference games. The 4 non-con games are 1 each from the other Power 5 conferences. And I've heard people propose that. That would be fine. You're shutting out the group of 5 entirely, and you're bringing us down to 8 conference games. The issue, 28 AD 28 pointed it out when he went to his 10-team conferences, 8 conferences. Although I'm not crazy about his playoff system, I can kind of respect his playoff system and actually earning the spot by winning a conference. But these conferences are too big. So when you only play 8 conference games in the SEC or the ACC, you're missing 5 teams in your conference. The reason you play in a conference is for everyone to play each other to determine who the best team is. Not so you're only playing 8 of the other 13 teams in the conference. You're missing 5 games. 5 teams you're missing. 5 possible opponents. That's way too many. Again, perfect world is the Big 12. 10 teams, 9 games, everybody plays everybody. That is the best way to do it. And in that case, you don't even need a conference championship game. I love the conference championship games, but back in the old days, and the way the Big 12 does, the Big 12 just added a conference championship game again, so that they wouldn't get snubbed out of the playoff, number 1. Number 2, they would make money again. So that's why they got the waiver. They got the approval to play from the NCAA. Why they need approval from the NCAA, I don't know. Needed approval to play a conference championship game. Can't the Big 12 just say, we're playing a conference championship game? So Auburn has gone out and played. They've scheduled Clemson many times, as Jordan points out. There 5 times the last decade. I know they played back-to-back a couple years ago near the end of Deshaun Watson's run. I think 2015 and 16, or I think it was 16 and 17. And the second game was Jarrett Stidham got sacked a million times at Clemson. They lost like 14-6. But Auburn's gone out there and scheduled Clemson. They played Oregon last year, 2019. They're playing home and home against Penn State. They played Kansas State. I think they got UCLA coming up. Who else has Auburn played? Yes, Washington, Oregon, Clemson, Penn State, Kansas State. Why the Buckeyes dropped Wisconsin off their schedule is my issue. I don't really understand that statement, Cheryl. Ohio State doesn't have anything they don't have anything to do with the Big Ten schedule. They didn't drop Wisconsin off their schedule. They play everyone in the Big Ten Western Division the same number of times. So as soon as Nebraska, for example, would fall off the Big Ten Western Division schedule for Ohio State, then they may pick up Wisconsin. They'll play them 2 or 3 straight years. So, okay. Ohio State is playing Rutgers in Maryland because they're in the same division. Number one ND fan. Notre Dame has dominated teams worse than them having gotten upset in year. Okay. SEC dog. I love this comment. Ohio State doesn't like to travel either. Canceled a home and home with us years ago. Y'all come play in 110-degree heat in September and we'll go play. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, you understand in September, the first or second game of the season, the temperatures in the states are almost the same. You can go in, you can be in Minnesota and it can be 98 degrees out. It's not that big a disparity for a brief window of time for the first week or two all across the country. I live in Connecticut. It is like 28 degrees right now, but the first week of September, it might be 94 degrees. So anyway, yeah, whatever. Georgia traveling to Columbus to play in September, they're not going to freeze. It's going to be 82 degrees the first week of September, and then it's going to be 75 the next week. They're not going to freeze. Okay. SEC dog. Ohio State travels. They travel. OSU don't like to travel either. Don't make ignorant comments. This is what we've stopped, hopefully. We're in the process of stopping this. On my channel, our channel, here at the Voice of College Football, ignorance. No ignorance allowed here. We stop it. We correct people when they make stupid comments that are not factual. So Ohio State had a trip this season slated to play at Oregon. Can they travel any further than to Oregon? Yeah, they can go play Hawaii. Do you want them to play Hawaii? They were going to play Oregon. They've traveled to Washington. And again, if you need to get a map out, SEC dog, we'll get you a map. Can somebody Google a map for SEC dog? Get him a map so he understands where these places are. Ohio State's played out at Washington 3 times since 1986. 86, 94, 07, they've gone to Washington. Okay? How many trips has Georgia taken to Washington and Oregon? Okay? All right. Ohio State went out to California. Again, geography lesson. Ohio to California, big trip, long trip, a lot of miles. Ohio State went out to Cal in 2013. Okay? All right, I can keep going. USC, they've gone out to USC. 2008, they played a home and home with USC. That's, again, Ohio, California. It's a pretty long trip. Okay? UCLA, they've gone out to UCLA to play the Rose Bowl when Jim Tressel was there. Okay? There's almost too much. I have too much material here, SEC dog. You understand? You've made this too easy that I've got too many games to go through that Ohio State's traveled a long distance. Oklahoma. They've gone to Oklahoma. They've gone to UCLA. They've gone to Arizona State. They've gone to Arizona. They've gone to Virginia Tech. Now, is that a monumental trip? No, but are they in the backyard? No. Florida has not left the state for a non-conference game, for a road game, since 1991. Take that in, everyone. Take that in. Just let that sink in. The Florida Gators have not left the state of Florida for a non-conference game, road game, since 1991. They lost to Syracuse. Maybe that shied them away from going anywhere. Okay, where has Georgia gone in the last couple decades? Notre Dame. Have they gone to Washington? Have they gone to Oregon? Have they gone to Cal? Have they gone to USC and UCLA? Answer, no. Oklahoma, no. Where has Georgia gone? Oh, yeah. That's right. What's the trip from Athens to Atlanta? What's the travel involved there? Athens to Atlanta. Because you played some of those games. You played Boise State in Atlanta. And then, of course, you had the return trip to Boise State, right? You played at Boise State. Oh, no. You didn't do that, did you? No. Who in the hell has Georgia played anywhere? I came up with a big trip to Notre Dame. That was monumental. Like, my goodness, that was just historic for Georgia to go all the way up to play Notre Dame. Man, I'm coming up with nothing else. Please, somebody help me. Where else has Georgia gone? Nowhere. I think they got UCLA coming up, but they haven't gone there yet. I got nothing, and I got a pretty good handle on Georgia's schedule. Where have they traveled? Notre Dame once. Versus what I list off. Cal, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Stanford, Washington, Oregon, Oklahoma, Virginia Tech, Boston College. No. I really don't like correcting people, but I sometimes have to do that. SEC dog, I'm sorry, had to correct you. When you say stupid things that are not factual, then you've just, SEC dog, you've been watching us a long time. I appreciate it, but when you say stupid things that aren't right, then that's what happens. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Nancy, the Ohio State fan. I called your show last month. Well, you were asking about who Georgia played the last decade or so. They traveled to Tempe to play Arizona State in 2008, and they traveled to Boulder to play Colorado in 2010.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll call in just to ask. I know you looked at Ohio State's schedule changing after Big Ten came up with that new schedule last week. How did that they moved the Penn State game to earlier, but Ohio State still got traveled with Michigan, but Michigan canceled that game this past year, and shouldn't they come to Columbus this upcoming year?
The Big Ten decided to stay with the matchups and the home and away sites that were originally scheduled, and not push everything a year down the road. So that's what they decided. I don't know that they gave a reason. I didn't hear it.
Oh, all right. And what I was going to ask is, you just don't. I know this is too early because we haven't had the spring game yet and everything, but as of right now, you just don't see anybody beat them in the regular season, right?
Well, I could see them losing a game. I would be shocked if they. Well, shocked is a little strong. I would be surprised if they didn't win the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, see, because I'm not buying into the hype of Michigan and the new coaches. I mean,
I'm not either.
I know they got rid of Don Brown and all that, but I mean, happily with Don Brown, the other half of Jim Harbaugh is starting to get the game coach. So,
I'm sorry, you cut out there. What was the comment about Don Brown?
I said half of it was John Brown's fault, and the other half was that Jim Harbaugh was not a good big game coach in college football.
Not a good big game coach. Well, I would agree with that. I would do my best to try to find reasons why I could debate you on that. But yeah, they've lost most of their big games, the great majority of big games. Yep.
Because when he was at Stanford, he had that big one over USC in 07, and he never won the conference. He lost to Oregon when it mattered the most in 2010. I don't think they won the Orange Bowl, but they didn't win the conference, though. I mean, Michigan didn't win anything. I mean, when he was in the NFL, he lost to his brother in the Super Bowl. I mean, he really hasn't won anything.
Well, his NFL, I'm not going to in any way criticize his stint in the NFL. His stint in the NFL is pretty remarkable. It's pretty jaw-dropping what he accomplished in the NFL. He took over a team that was 2-14, and they played in 3 consecutive NFC championship games. And, you know, when you're a coach standing on the sideline, you can't throw the ball, catch the ball, block. You're standing on the sideline, and with a couple decent throws into the end zone, he could have won a Super Bowl. His team was right there. It's not like they were unprepared or got blown out. They played a close game down to the wire in the Super Bowl and all the championship games. So I think it was I will defend Jim Harbaugh as an NFL coach at San Francisco and say he's got like the 4th best winning percentage in the history of the NFL. It was a short stint, but
see, because I know I watch your show with Steve Dace all the time, and I know a lot of people praise that 2016 defense and everything, but don't you think the main reason why the 2016 defense was that good was because JT Barrett can throw the ball well, and Ed Warner and Tim Beck were the bad offensive coordinators for OSU.
Yeah, I thought Michigan was a better team in 2016. I thought it was close. I thought I should say it this way. I thought that they were the better team on that day. Yeah, I'm saying because remember that year, OSU got to the playoffs and got shut out. Well, remember, it was that game alone is what caused Urban Meyer to hire Ryan Day. Yep. But don't you feel like if OSU had a better quarterback and a better offensive coordinator, that game doesn't come down to the wire at all? Well, they didn't have a better quarterback. So I agree with you. I think it's a great point, and you're right. And it's not like I haven't stated that either. And I really respected JT Barrett. I liked him. But there's no question in comparing his passing skills with what they've had since. There's no comparison. And he limited them. I think he's a great winner, a great individual, great leader, and did his very best for Ohio State University. But he was just limited. And, the point can be made. If Ohio State had a better quarterback, would the game been 31-0? Of course not. But they didn't. Unless you could make the argument the better quarterback might have been standing on the sideline, but I know a lot of OSU fans blame the 2015 as failure, but I thought 2017 was more disappointing because remember that team was preseason ranked number 2. Yeah. And also hit their stride offensively and everything. They lost to Oklahoma. They lost to Iowa. I mean, that was disappointing. Yeah, that was a disappointing season, although, in some respects, they still won the Big Ten and the Cotton Bowl. And but the Oklahoma score was a bit misleading. The final score, Ohio State had a 1-point lead in the 4th quarter of that game. But it was 17-13 Oklahoma in the 4th quarter. Well, at one point late in the 3rd quarter, they had a lead against Oklahoma. But they had more passing issues in that game. 2 more questions before I leave. One, are you really buying into Georgia for next year? Because I still think that's Alabama's conference to win. You think Alabama? I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. No, I'm saying, are you really buying into Georgia for next year? Because I still think that's Alabama's conference to win. Well, I'm always going to think until proven otherwise that Alabama yes, has a system in place, a head coach and a coaching staff that's exceptional, and they recruit at least as good as Georgia, but they've lost a wealth of not just great talent, but experienced talent that is achieved. But until proven otherwise, you would expect Alabama would play in the clutch and play a more of a technically sound and poised game than Georgia has, because that's what's happened when they've gotten together when it mattered.
Yeah, because I've always said that nobody wastes five-star quarterback talent more than Kirby Smart. Because I mean, they had Justin Fields, let him go, and I mean, I'm not a believer in Kirby Smart.
I think he's done a great job in regards to everything but selecting a quarterback and developing an offense. And that's a lot. That's huge. That's key. But I think Georgia's fortunate to have Kirby Smart. I think he's, if you really look at the history of Georgia football, recent history of Georgia football, Mark Richt doesn't get the credit that he deserves, but he upgraded the program significantly since the latter days of Vince Dooley in the mid to late 80s till the time Mark Richt took over in 2002. Georgia didn't do anything. They were okay, but they had a lot of 7 and 8 win seasons, a couple 5 and 6 years in the 90s. And Mark Richt made it a top 10 program consistently. And then Kirby Smart took over and he upgraded it even further. They just, when people say they haven't gotten over the hump, that means just win a national championship, because they've done everything else. They've won the SEC. They've gone to the national championship game. They've won a college football playoff game. They finished in the top 10 every year.
Yeah, and one more question. Are you buying into Oklahoma hype also? I think I'm more of a disbeliever in Oklahoma than I am in Georgia.
Well, I would be more of a disbeliever in Oklahoma for the fact that they don't recruit the level of talent that Georgia does, or at that volume. So they don't have as good a roster in terms of talent that Georgia does. But they play in a conference where they don't need to. But once they hit the playoff, then it's going to have to be proven to me that they're really a different team. But even within the confines of the Big 12, they did play just a completely different level of defense this year than they had in the past.
Yeah, but because they've been to the playoff 4 times, and except for that 1 year in Georgia, they've been blown out in every single one of them. So I mean, it is ridiculous.
True. They have not competed for the most part.
All right, Mark, thanks for taking my call.
Hey, appreciate it. Have a good night.
Sure.
All right, very good stuff. We're talking college football, of course, but the focus is on the scheduling. So I released scheduling fixes for 4 of the 5 conferences. The reason I left out the Big 12 is, watch the videos. Yeah, they play everybody. They play the truest championship that exists. My monitor went to sleep. So I wanted to go through all the comments instead of going on there individually and just typing out responses to all these comments that have come into the scheduling videos. I just wanted to come on here and I went through the Big 10 comments. What's going on? Let's look at this monitor. It dug out an old monitor and works fine when it's working, but then it goes to sleep and I can't get the thing juiced back up here. Okay. If that helps us out at all. There we go. Okay. Got to unplug the thing and plug it back in to get it going. All right. Good to see everyone here. Again, I hope you guys realize what the deal is here with the business we're building here at the Voice of College Football. Individual contributions are needed to keep this thing going. Otherwise, see what happens down the road. That day trading seems to be an option. Pardon the pun. Yeah, the day trading might be an option. Get on that. But anyway, otherwise, your individual contributions, sponsorships are going to keep us going and keep this channel going. Otherwise, yeah, I can open the, we can try the political channel. We can give that a shot, see if anybody latches onto that. Probably get kicked off of YouTube within like 4 hours. Or we can do the Elvis channel. I can talk Elvis all day. We could do that. And I see people with tons more views than I have just talking about Elvis. You know, the guy's been dead for 43 years, and there's still a lot more interest in Elvis than college football, apparently. So I could start that channel. Or, let's see, politics, Elvis, I can speak on. We could start our NFL channel. That would probably get more views. We could do that. Whatever I need to do to make money, those are about my subject areas. You'd have to stay with that. So if you see me shut this down and start up another one, then that's what we're going for. We needed to pay the bills and eat. No politics. You're right, Mark. I would go crazy talking about politics. I think it would be much more meaningful over, and I'm not talking about politics like all the time, Democrats and Republicans. I'm talking about like real stuff, like social issues and what's going on in the world. But number one, I'd get kicked off here. I guarantee it, because I would speak the truth. So I'd speak the truth. So, you know, that's not allowed in this country anymore. So I'd get kicked off, number one. Number two, yeah, it would just get too frustrating. This is all fun and games and enjoyment and entertainment, and you can only get so mad watching football, even though I used to get really mad watching football. Now it's just like, it's fun. It's entertaining. I love football. But yeah, so talking about those weighty issues, that would drag me down. That would drag me down. Yeah. All right, but those are the options. You know, maybe I'll run a poll and see which route we should go. Which subject matter do we need to go with if this doesn't work out? We can really do that. All right, anything else coming in that we need to address? I guess I didn't address Uncle Lou, college football is the best regular season in all of sports, so let's make a bunch of changes. Well, some changes they don't need to happen. Nothing needs to happen. But it is a pathetic scheduling system by the conferences. The conferences are run by pretty smart people, but I guess when you get them all together, I guess that's the problem. You take some fairly smart people, but they get in the same room together, and then the result of the scheduling is pathetic. It's broken badly. It's broken badly, both the non-conference and the conference. And then, of course, the playoff is a joke as well. The playoff is pathetic. It's not a playoff. It's an invitational. So we're just offering up better alternatives. All right. I wanted to go through the other comments that came in concerning scheduling. See what else we got here. With the non-conference, let's see what we got here. Responding to our non-conference, Jim John says, I like Mark Rogers' plan. I just wish we could reduce the conferences to 12 teams and have one more non-conference game instead. It would be nice to have smaller conferences. The conferences are too large. I went through that before. Missing 5 opponents in your conference is unacceptable. It's stupid. The reason you play in a conference is to play teams, not once every 6 years to play a team. That's idiotic. Again, idiotic. Jeremy Garrettson, Mark Rogers, no D, Jeremy, for college football commissioner. So I think I'm a good candidate for college football commissioner, not because I'm the smartest guy in the room, but because I realize I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So that's sometimes the best guy that to organize things, is to have the guy that knows that he's not the smartest guy in the room. And then I go get the guy that the people that understand law, that understand finances, that you surround yourself with good people, and you just break things down, understand things, talk about things, work them out, come up with the best solutions and systems. That's what you do. It's what I've been doing for 25 or 30 years outside of this little deal I got going right here. Was, knowing that almost every time I was not the smartest person in the room, but understanding that all these smart people were expert at what they're doing, so we need to pull them together, and then we can come up with a process. We can come up with timelines and deadlines, and we can understand what the objectives should be. And that's how you get things done. So, Jeremy, I'm going to take your nomination for college football commissioner. I'm just not going to put you in charge of the plaque that you put on my office door or on my desk, because I would like to have my name spelled correctly. That would be good. All right. Otherwise, I'm right there with you. Let's see. Carl says he can't find the SEC schedule breakdown. All right. The videos are right there, Carl. So hopefully you found it. George says, when I saw that Florida had scheduled Notre Dame that far out, I actually laughed out loud. Yeah, I just shake my head, thinking, why? So I don't blame the schools at this point. I can't blame them, because when you get caught up in a system and you have to play along, otherwise you're going to get trampled. So if Florida doesn't go out and schedule Notre Dame for 20, 31, and 32, then they're not going to get to play Notre Dame or a quality opponent. So you got to just play along with the stupid system. So it's not the school's issues. That's not their fault. Just somebody needs to rein them all in, pull them all in and say, no, we've got a better way to do this. And that's actually, we all work together under a system to build the schedules. Not everybody runs around with their own agenda building their own schedule. Again, stupid. Dependent Fanatic says, I like it, meaning the scheduling system. You are making, I like it, but you are making it very hard for a non-Power 5 team to become one. It was already almost impossible. Okay, so it's almost impossible for a non-Power 5 to become a Power 5, but my system makes it impossible? I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So we got Dependent Fanatics saying yes, but that doesn't mean that small schools will get Power 5 conference money. All right. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yeah, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here.
Lou, what's going on?
Yeah, I wanted to hear more about this thing, how during the conference you should play every team. That's the right way to do it. Tell me more about this.
Well, that would be the ideal way to do it. We can't do it now because there's just too many teams in these conferences, so we can't do it. So I'm not saying we will do it, but that's the best way to do it.
Is there any Power 5 conference that does do that?
Yes, we've got one.
Who?
The Big 12.
How many natties they got last 15 years?
So we're determining scheduling. So like if the local high school football conference does a nice job of scheduling, but they don't produce a high school football state champion, then that's because maybe they don't have good enough football players. That doesn't mean they don't have a good football system of scheduling. I don't see the connection between the two.
What's the goal? What's Oklahoma's goal?
To win a national championship. So you're saying that if we add teams to the Big 12, that they're automatically going to start winning national championships?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the Big 12 and some people, you have been preaching that the Big 12 is doing it right and everyone else is doing it wrong, while everyone else is busy beating the hell out of the Big 12 constantly.
I don't see the connection between their scheduling and their success on the field, though.
Well,
I don't see the connection because
what reason is it that you think the Big 12 hasn't won a national title in 15 years?
Well, before I answer that, I'm going to point out that before the Big 12 was reduced to 10 teams, they weren't necessarily winning national championships before that. So before 2012, before they lost,
they were. Yeah, they were. Texas and Oklahoma both won national titles in the
2005.
Of the 2000s.
But the previous 7 seasons, they didn't win national titles before they lost those 2 teams.
Well, 7's not nearly the same as 16.
Well, no, it's been 8 seasons since so 7, 8. We're splitting hairs here. They weren't able to play all the teams prior to 2012, and they weren't winning national championships.
I've been hearing for years that the only reason the SEC wins anything is because they only play 8 conference games and they play Louisiana Monroe in November, whereas Ohio State plays 9 conference games and they play Miami of Ohio in September.
Yeah, but you're not hearing that from me.
How many conference games did Ohio State play this year?
They played all their games were conference games. They played 5 conference games and then 6 with the championship
5
game.
conference games? 5. They only played 5 conference games? They must have ran away with the national title because playing less conference games equals more national titles according to Ohio State man and Big Ten man. So
I don't know. You
5
didn't.
national titles. Ohio State only played 5 conference games. How many did the SEC? How many did Alabama play?
You didn't hear that from me. So I don't know who you're talking about. I've never stated that. The SEC is the best conference because they recruit the best players.
10 conference games, did they not? Alabama played 10 conference games.
Who are you arguing with?
Did Alabama play Louisiana Monroe in November this year?
I don't know. I don't know who you're debating, though.
You don't know? How do you not know?
I never made that statement.
Of course they didn't.
I never made a statement that the Big Ten should be complaining about playing too many conference games and that the SEC has I had never made the statement that the SEC is winning championships because they only play 8 conference games.
So I'm speaking Greek to you. You haven't heard this argument.
Oh, I've heard the argument. Yes, I've heard the argument, but
okay.
All I'm doing is nodding my head because I don't disagree with you. So I don't know why.
It's a ridiculous argument, isn't it?
Yeah, the SEC is the best conference because they recruit and sign the best players.
Not because they play Louisiana Monroe in November.
No, I could care less about that. I do want every team in the SEC to play.
Not because they play 8 conference games instead of 9.
No, that has nothing to do with it.
Should the Big Ten play? Shouldn't the Big Ten? How many? What if the Big 12 doesn't? What if the Big 12 added 1 team and they started playing 10 conference games a year? Should the Big Ten change to 10 conference games then?
No, I would like to see uniformity, but it's not crucial. I can go with 8 or 9 conference games, but I would like to see uniformity.
Okay.
We're trying to evaluate teams across the nation. We're trying to evaluate these teams for the playoffs.
Yep. The NFL has uniformity. They got 32 teams, 2 conferences, 16 teams in each conference, 4 divisions of 4 teams in each. Top 4 division winners make it, plus the 2 teams with the next best record. We have that already.
Yeah.
No one watching you right now likes that.
Okay, I'm not proposing an NFL schedule.
Or they wouldn't be watching you. They would be watching an NFL channel.
But I've never proposed an NFL-like schedule. I don't want an NFL-like schedule.
You want equality and parity in the same schedule.
No, not parity.
8 teams per conference so that everybody can play everybody.
I'm not.
Let me ask you this. You don't know whether or not Vanderbilt is better or worse than Alabama in a given year?
Sure I do.
Can't you watch them and tell? Since we had the playoff, has there been a team that didn't get in the playoffs that could have won the playoffs, in your opinion?
Possibly. I think that Ohio State team in 2015.
And what's the average margin of victory in the round one playoff games?
Probably 25 points. Yeah, you're.
But somehow the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th team. I don't know what we're missing out on here. What are we?
Okay.
So Alabama beating who finished the season this year ranked 8th? Georgia. So Alabama beating Georgia again in the first round would have excited you?
I would like to see representation from all the conferences in the playoff. The people saying that, for example, that the Pac-12 can't compete in the playoff, we don't know that. We haven't seen the Pac-12 play in the playoff in so long. Who knows? And just because I don't think they can compete shouldn't be the end-all be-all. People selecting in a room should not be the way we're selecting playoff teams.
Well, I don't know. College football is subjective and it's not perfect, and I think that's what a lot of people like about it. Try making a top 10 NFL poll in August or September and see how many people care. They don't.
Well, I think the NFL does just fine with what it's doing. Yeah, I understand because
and college football doesn't seem to be hurting either.
It doesn't seem to be hurting, but people are complaining about the same teams playing for a national championship. Now, that shouldn't be excused. That's not the fault of the teams that run the sport, the elite programs. The other teams need to step up. Okay, let me just make one.
This isn't anything new, though. This isn't anything new. The Yankees made the World Series every year in the 2000s. The Braves made the World Series and won their division every year in the 90s. Now they're in the toilet. The Patriots won how many Super Bowls? Now they can't make the playoffs, and they probably won't for the next 10 years. The Dallas Cowboys ran the NFL in the late 90s. San Francisco 49ers ran the NFL in the early 90s.
Sure, for very short periods of
all
time.
All of this stuff comes and goes. Alabama was in the toilet from 1993 to 2007. That wasn't that long ago. And they're going to be in the toilet again at some point.
Yes,
we Clemson and Georgia and Oklahoma and Ohio State.
We have not seen a situation in which a Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama triumvirate has ruled the sport in college football for 7 years. Like if you go through the 80s and 90s, you see a larger pool of teams that were competitive for national championships.
How many teams won a national title in the 90s? Versus how many teams won a national title in the 2010s? Is it the same?
No.
Miami, Florida State, Florida,
Georgia Tech, Colorado, Florida State, Nebraska.
You're counting 2 teams for 1 year.
Michigan.
You're counting 2 teams for 1 year.
Well, they won the national championship. I don't know which one you're choosing.
In the 2010s, you've got Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State. How many do you need? How many different teams, that's 5, how many different teams need to win a national title per decade for it to quote unquote, not be the same team every year? Okay. This debate has gone a place where this is not what my point was in all of this. But, if 3 schools are going to rule the sport, then that's not their fault. That's the fault of the other teams that are trying to compete. So what I'm proposing doesn't necessarily correct the situation of dominance. That's not what I'm trying to do. That's not the point in all this.
It's that it's unfair. Oh, okay. So let me throw this one at you. Okay, let's look at SEC scheduling. And I could give you 25 examples like this. Okay. Alabama and LSU play in the same division and are fighting for the same division championship, correct? Yes. So they play each other and they play everyone in the same division, in their division. So that's 6 games out of their 8 conference games that are exactly alike. So there are two different games that they play. And again, I got 25 examples like this. In this particular year, I'm looking at it, Alabama plays Kentucky and Tennessee, who went 1-15 combined in the SEC. And LSU plays Georgia and Florida, who went a combined 14-2 in the SEC. That's the type of thing I'm trying to correct. How is that fair for LSU to have to play Georgia and Florida while Alabama's playing Kentucky and Tennessee?
Well, I think the problem is that you're looking for fair, and most people aren't interested in. If people are interested in fair, they're watching on Sundays, not on Saturdays.
No, actually, the NFL's not. No, see, this is the misconception about what I'm doing. It's not the NFL. The NFL creates an unfair situation. The NFL doesn't create it's not fair that the worst team in the NFL gets to draft first and the Super Bowl champion drafts last. That's not fair. Why is that fair? No, the NFL props up the bad teams and they suppress the good teams. That's why the good teams get the tougher schedules and the bad teams get easier schedules. That's not what I'm proposing. I'm proposing equity. Fair. Vanderbilt's going to have just as tough a schedule as Alabama is.
Okay, but again,
that's not the NFL.
That still would not be fair. LSU was the best team on planet Earth in 2019, went 15-0 and blew out almost everybody they played. According to your model, then LSU then would have to play some kind of great team in 2020.
No.
Was a trash can last year.
No, you're not. No, this is not an NFL schedule. We are not suppressing the good teams and lifting up the. No, everybody's playing a 500 schedule. You're totally
talking about Alabama having to play Kentucky and Tennessee.
Yes.
And it's not fair because they were 1-15 last year.
Yes.
Whereas LSU has to play Georgia and Florida, and they were 14-2
yes.
last year. That doesn't mean. What do you think Florida's going? You think Florida's winning 11 or 12 games this year?
Okay.
No. So what does last year have to do with trying to make the schedule fair for this year? You can't make the schedule fair because you don't know how these teams are going to be.
Just like LSU winning the national championship would have absolutely no impact on my scheduling system the next year. LSU would get treated just like every other team in the country. They get a 500 schedule.
A 500 schedule according to what? Last year?
Yes.
What does last year matter?
You don't think that?
That's not fair.
You don't think
you can't give a team a 500 schedule in 2021 based off teams' 2020 schedules. That's not fair.
Well, we can't do it this year because of COVID, but we can do it every other year.
We can't do it any year. It's never fair.
Yes, we can.
Well,
yes, you can't predict the future.
Auburn won the title in 2010. Auburn won the title in 2020 and couldn't tie their shoes in 2011.
I understand that. You cannot
using their 2010 record to schedule.
You can only be as fair. You can only be as fair as the information and the knowledge that you have. No, we can't predict the future. We can't predict the future. But I have a pretty good idea.
The way that you're suggesting wouldn't be fair. It would just be unfair in a different way.
It would be much more fair than what it is now. Because I think we got a pretty good handle of certain teams staying the same in terms of their status. I think we got a pretty good idea that Ohio State's going to be one of the best teams in the Big Ten this coming season. And Michigan State's going to be pretty marginal. And Illinois is going to be near the bottom.
If that's true, then does it matter who you schedule Ohio State to play from the other division if you already made those assumptions?
I didn't make the assumptions. I'm not making assumptions with building this schedule. I'm taking hard data from the previous season and applying it to this season's schedule.
Right, and 30% of the team is different. You're going to be rotating home and away games from the previous year. Playing at Penn State, not the same as playing at Ohio State.
Sure.
I mean, so
I'm not saying your way is wrong, but it's not fair.
Well, I'm not saying it's.
And if fair
Well,
is the goal, I don't know what we're doing here.
Okay, more as fair as we
I
possibly.
like arguing about college football, and all this stuff that people want to take away is half the fun.
Lou.
I mean, you don't think it hurt me in 2018 to see Georgia finish fifth in the final playoff in the poll after conference championship weekend? I mean,
sure.
And half the people saying we should be 4 instead of Oklahoma. I mean, it would be easier for me to come on here and say, "Oh yeah, change around me." No, I mean that's the way it works. And when we go to 8 teams, when these TV contracts come up in 2024, we go to 8 teams. Then we can all come on here and make videos crying about the 9th ranked team because that's what's going to happen.
Yes, but here's the difference, Lou. Here's the one difference between once you get to 8 teams is that right now, what can a team do to confirm entry into the playoff? What can they do to guarantee that they will make the playoff? What can any team in the country do?
There is no guarantee.
Absolutely. You're right. There is no guarantee because if all 5 conference champions go undefeated, what happens? One of them gets left out and they say, what did you want us to do? We're 13-0. We beat everybody by 50 points. We got left out. At least once you get to 8 teams, you include all the conferences in terms of representation. And then if Georgia or Wisconsin or whomever's crying because they finished second in the Big Ten or the SEC and went 12-2 or 13-1 or whatever, at least you can say, you know what, your conference was represented. And if you wanted to make the playoffs, you should have won your conference. At least you can say that.
Okay, now in this model where conference champions get in and it matters and that's a guarantee, in order to remain fair under this model, how do you prop up Notre Dame?
Well, Notre Dame, yeah. I hate Notre Dame's situation because I want to reel them into a conference.
If this whole thing is about fair, then Notre Dame no longer gets in ever with a 12-game schedule.
I would not have an issue with that.
Fair.
I would not have an issue with that.
Well, let's end it there because we agree. Screw Notre Dame. Rudy was offsides. Everyone knows that. Plus, it was 50 years ago. And no one cares about a $13 million a year TV contract with NBC. 6 home games NBC gets to show. I don't think these Notre Dame people really understand basic economics. Have a good day, Mark.
Thanks, Lou. Appreciate that. Lou's great. Love the call. And that never really hit home with me, the Notre Dame thing, until 2018. Because I always thought Notre Dame, they go out and, yeah, they're not in a conference. I want them in a conference. I think they should be in the Big Ten. That's where all their rivalries are long-term, historically, Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue. Notre Dame in the Big Ten. Geographically, obviously, they're right in the middle of Big Ten country. That always made the most sense. But I always thought, you know what, Notre Dame's schedule is really tough. USC, Stanford, on down the line. They schedule really tough. So I always defended Notre Dame from a scheduling standpoint. You know, it took me sitting here watching the 2018 conference championship games thinking, you know what? Virginia Tech was down, Florida State was down, USC was down, Stanford was down. Notre Dame really wasn't their fault, but didn't play a tough schedule. They're 12-0. And here I'm watching Ohio State and Oklahoma have to play 2 good teams in conference championship games to try to get into the playoff as the 4th team. And I'm thinking, one of them's going to get left out. And why are they sticking their necks on the line, playing for a conference championship and trying to fight for that 4th spot while Notre Dame's sitting at home? That's when it really hit me. It was 2018, and I thought, okay, this is wrong. All right. And you know, D-Rock Irish, I don't blame Notre Dame. I don't blame Notre Dame for the situation that went on with the ACC this year. I blame the ACC. They should have said, you know what? We will let you in our conference permanently, not for 1 year. Can you imagine the embarrassment had Notre Dame? I wanted Notre Dame to beat Clemson, not because I like Notre Dame or don't like Clemson. I just wanted to stick it in the face of the ACC to say, you morons, you let a team in and you let a team abuse you, a program abuse you for 1 year, and they came in and won the conference. How idiotic is that? The ACC had Notre Dame right where they wanted them. They should have said, sign a 20-year contract. You want to play football this year, sign a 20-year contract. That's what the ACC should have done, but they didn't do it. John Swofford, knucklehead, didn't get it done. So I don't blame Notre Dame for their position in college football. It's not their problem. They're doing whatever they want. I can't imagine the Big Ten. I especially can't imagine the SEC bowing to a school to say, oh, we want you to play just all these other sports, and you can sign up and play all these other sports. But football, we just feel good if you'll play our Wake Forest and our Dukes and just throw us a bone and play us 5 games. But, you're not in the conference. I just can't imagine, especially those 2 conferences, the SEC and Big Ten, having that low a self-esteem to say, we would allow somebody to abuse us like that. No, they'd say, we're the Big Ten, we're the SEC. We don't play those games. We don't get screwed by anybody. But the ACC, it was all about this. We schedule Notre Dame for 5 or 6 games, and then that props up Wake Forest and Duke and Georgia Tech. They get to play Notre Dame and get on TV and put some more butts in the seats. That's what it came down to. Okay. I never proposed that my scheduling system is totally fair. It's fair on paper. In reality, once it's played, it can't be fair because we can't predict the future. Okay? We can't predict the future. So the scheduling system also, okay. I put this in the video about the non-conference scheduling. Since 1997, Baylor has not played a ranked team outside the conference. No non-conference games against ranked teams. Baylor, none, 0. You know how many USC has played? And I just chose USC out of the air because I know they play tough games. USC has played 24 ranked opponents in non-conference games. 24 since the last time Baylor played 1. The scheduling needs to be fixed. And Lou, you still get great games. I don't know why. And it's not this is the misnomer about the scheduling. Just because it's a formula, it's not like the NFL. The NFL gives tougher schedules to good teams to suppress them and lifts up the bad teams. We're not doing this. Vanderbilt has just as tough a schedule as Oklahoma. All right, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's 2880.
Hey, I saw your system in there with the 10 conferences or the 8 conferences with 10 teams.
Yes.
I like it.
Good. I think it makes sense, and I'd like to put the conference champions as playoff teams. I think it makes sense. I don't know how equitable it would be in that sense, but I think it makes sense just from the standpoint that it raises the value of conference championships, or at least restores the value of conference championships to some degree.
So, the big pushback you're going to get is that if some conferences are deemed as weak conferences, and then there are going to be second-place teams and third-place teams from the SEC in particular, people are going to say, why aren't they in your playoff?
They didn't win their conference.
Yeah,
that's the whole point of having a conference championship. Win your conference and you're in. That's how you get in. That's your objective rule.
For as decisive as I like to be on most stances, I got to admit I battle back and forth on this one because the purist in me, I'll just leave it at that, wants to say and will say, I love that system. Win your conference. And, if one of the conferences is a little weaker, so be it. Everybody gets represented, every conference, fairly. And, there's no, throwing 13 people in a room that come out with an answer. We are held hostage by 13 people who select the fate of college football. I just think that's insane.
Right. Yes, I agree 500%. 500%. And that's what I want to get away from. I want to get away from the backroom handshake and who owes who and what network wants to put what team on and who gets the most ratings and who's bringing the most money and who do we
universally recognized as the 2 best teams or the 5 best. We need to get away from all that. Make it objective. A touchdown's a touchdown. I don't care if you're Alabama or if you're San Jose State. It's worth 7 points. But when you put people in a room, somebody's going to deem Alabama's touchdown to be worth 9 points because that guy did it because they're them, and San Jose's touchdown only worth 2 points. We need to get away from that. We need to end all that. Win your conference and you're in. Don't win your conference, come back next year.
Now, do you know
Just like we tell it,
what 80 teams would be in your conferences?
well, there have to be some group of 5 teams that get moved in because I think we only have like maybe 72 teams or something like that
64.
currently. 64.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we'd have quite a few group of 5 teams. Notre Dame would go in, BYU would go in, and then we'd find a bunch of other group of 5 teams to jump in there as well.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, but I'd love to have the 10-team conference. Everybody's playing. Everybody plays everybody in your conference.
See,
You get 3 non-conference games. I would use the Mark Rogers scheduling formula for those 2. You can schedule 1 game for yourself, pick up your FCS team or whatever, or group of 5 team of your choice, and then the composite 500 schedule.
yeah,
I love that. I think that's spectacular.
I don't know why more people don't have a problem with what's going on with scheduling in conference. You know, people cry and bellyache, and I do too, about the non-conference scheduling, saying, you know, why don't we see better games? But when it comes to in-conference scheduling, again, I don't think that the Big 12 is genius. I just think they fell into this. They fell into the model by attrition, by losing teams. But that's the reason you play in a conference or a division, is to play everybody.
Right.
To determine the fairest way to determine the champion.
Sure.
For there to be teams in the ACC and the SEC to not see other teams for 6 years playing in the same conference, 6 years.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Right. Right. We're all under the same umbrella, carrying the same flag, but we don't ever play them. You can play a home and home. Like, for instance, Georgia and Notre Dame. When they played a home and home, they played twice.
Yeah.
Up until when Georgia played Alabama this year, that's more regular season matches between Georgia and Notre Dame than you see between Alabama and Georgia.
Yes. Georgia
For a
and
long
Notre
period of
Dame. Yes, Georgia and Notre Dame will play the same number of times in 2 years than Alabama and Georgia will play in 12 years.
Right.
Playing in the same conference.
But they're in the same conference.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that needs to be fixed. That definitely needs to be fixed.
And
I will say this, though, Mark, about the Big 12.
Yeah.
I don't think they necessarily fell into that. I think they made a decision.
Okay.
I'm going to credit the Big 12 making a good decision.
All right.
Because the ACC was playing 8 games, conference games. The SEC was playing 8 conference games. They could have went that route. Or for that matter, from 1985 until 1993, the Big 10 had 10 teams and played 8 conference games. So
Yes.
they didn't necessarily fall into it. They made a decision to say, we're going to play everybody in our conference, which I think is one of the few smart things that they've done over the years. That was a good idea.
Yeah.
And I wish they didn't have the stupid conference championship game. I hate the conference championship game, Mark. That conference championship game to me has been a source of consternation because it's hurt Oklahoma over the years. Like when I look back at 2003, we played LSU for the national championship. We lost that game.
Yeah.
When you ask anybody about that game, they'll tell you the game wasn't a close game. LSU dominated that game, blah, 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 blah. Jason White played that game with a broken throwing hand. He broke his hand the game before when we played Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah,
We lost
I remember.
35-7.
Yep.
Jason White broke his hand in that game. That might hurt Oklahoma just a little bit. 2008, for the conference championship game against Missouri. We ended up losing the Florida national championship game.
Yeah.
2008 opening kickoff, we lose to Marco Murray, tears his meniscus on the opening kickoff. So he misses the Florida game. That's a big piece out of our offense that's gone.
Well,
Then, 2020?
Yep, keep going.
2017, or no, 2018. Not that he would have made a big difference because he didn't play defense and we couldn't stop Alabama for anything. But we lose Hollywood Brown in the Texas game, in the Big 12 Conference Championship game. He gets racked up. And he tried to play against Alabama, but he was like worse off than what Jalen Waddle was playing against Ohio State. He couldn't do anything. Couldn't run, he couldn't get open. He was done. He was just out there for show. So we lost key people because of the Big 12 Conference Championship game. And it impacts our ability to take a full team into those big games. So I'd love to see that thing go away.
Well, if everybody plays everyone, then you don't have a need for a conference championship game because it's already been decided on the field because the team with the best record is the conference champion. And if it's a tie, then the team that won the head-to-head matchups, the conference champion. A three-way tie might be a little bit difficult, but that would be pretty rare.
Sure. Yes, I'd love to see the conference championship game go away. And plus, I don't think they're really impactful. It feels to me like they're infomercials for the better team more than because we generally don't see a lot of upsets in those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, it ends up being an infomercial for whoever the higher ranked team was. They sort of solidify their place toward a playoff or make their better argument toward a playoff rather than somebody got knocked out of the playoff in their conference championship game. Very rare. Very rare.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Man, I do something. I do like the possibility of wild cards. I still do like the possibility of having wild cards in the playoff as well, though. But then you get back to see your model is again very pure, very traditional. Nobody has to argue. There's no selection process. There's none of that. Once you get to wild cards, then you got to select because I went through the playoff era, 2014 through 20, and I did both a 16 team and an 8 team and used 2 models. And man, there is a log jam to try to distinguish, okay, who's going to be number 8 or who's going to be 13 through 16 because we've got like a glut of 10-3 teams. We got like 6 10-3 teams, and only 2 of them can make it. So then you got to come up with, and I came up with different. There were only a couple times where there was a head-to-head involved, where it was like, okay, Minnesota, Penn State both went 11-2 in 2019. Minnesota beat them head-to-head. Bam, there you go. We're good with that. That worked out perfectly that particular year for me, the way I had it drawn up, because you had a Minnesota-Penn State tie in the Big Ten, and you had a Georgia-Florida one in the SEC, and you could just say, bam, there was a winner of those 2 games, so knock out the other ones. But generally, it came down to me just saying, okay, I want even representation for the conferences so that I made my selections. But, yeah, if you stay with the conference champions, then we've got no debate.
Yeah, I really think that you end up giving credit. You got to win your conference. Win your conference and you're in. If you don't win your conference, because we're always going to have situations where the country is so unbalanced in terms of recruiting, which I think is a whole nother level. I think if we really want to fix college football, we have to fix recruiting. That's what needs to be fixed. And I know there's a sentiment of, well, it's not the teams at the top's fault. Everybody else needs to get better. I do think that there are certain forces at play, though, that sort of help tilt this thing. Promotion of certain teams, product placement, who gets in prime time, because all those things are driven by money. And so there are certain things at play that I think sort of drive recruiting to some degree. That I think create unfair advantages for certain teams, certain conferences, certain schools.
Yeah.
So I wish we could fix recruiting.
I've had a number of people say to me, what, Mark, you want the Pac-12 to be in the college football playoff and just get killed? Is that what you want? Well, I first would need to see that actually happen, because all we've seen in 7 years is that the Pac-12 has made it twice. One of those 2 times, their team reached the national championship game after beating a team by 39 points, okay? The only other time we saw a Washington team that was playing Alabama to a 17-7 score in the fourth quarter. It wasn't some kind of annihilation. And those are the only two examples we have of the Pac-12 playing in the playoff, and it's far from embarrassing. So,
Sure.
Just this assumption that they're all going to get killed. Well, they haven't gotten killed. So let's actually watch it happen for a while before we say, okay, we may need to change something. The Pac-12 winner loses every year in the college football playoff by 4 touchdowns. Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, you know what, Mark? I've always been an OU fan. I guess I'm sort of, I won't say sensitive to it, but I hear it a lot. Where people say, you know, we shouldn't be in the playoff because they should leave us out of the playoff, leave OU out because they always go and get blown out. And my response is always, I ask the person who said that, so are you an LSU fan? They say no. I say, are you a Georgia fan? They say no. I said, well, if you're a fan of any team that's made a playoff, and you're not an LSU fan, you're not a Georgia fan, your team's been blown out of the playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
You've been blown out. So everybody, that's part of the price of doing business in this era. Everybody's been blown out. These games end up being lopsided for whatever reason. These games end up being lopsided. So yeah, I don't think there's any real shame in going to the playoff and getting routed, because it happens. If you've been there, again, if you've been there, you're not an LSU fan or a Georgia fan, your team's been blown out.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah, what do you think about recruiting, Mark? Because this might be kind of radical, but what do you think of shrinking roster sizes? Why do we have 85 men on a team? How about having 60 men on a team? And maybe recruiting classes go down to 15 instead of 25. Maybe that would spread talent out.
I think it would. I don't know by how much or to what impact, because Alabama's still getting the 15 best players, or not the 15 best, but the collection of the 15 best instead of, but I do think there's something with that, you know, that next 7 to 10 in terms of just depth being just ridiculously stacked, very talented depth.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the major problems with college football is that it's not so much that my 22 is better than your 22. My first 11 on offense and defense are better than yours. But when you get the players 23 to 35, I've got real players and you've got some pseudo players. So over the course of a game, you get worn down. You can play with me early in the game, but over the course of the game, you're going to wear out. You're not going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned with, and anytime something that complicated gets brought up, I don't like to just have an answer and say, yep, we should do that, or no, without weighing all the variables. But obviously, we would be eliminating scholarships for a lot of student athletes.
Yeah, that would be a drawback. That would be a drawback.
All right, sir. Appreciate the call. Got a few other ones coming in here.
Okay, Mark. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, you too. Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, give me a call back. I'm going to be on late tonight sometime. I will have to announce that. I've got some family stuff going on tonight, but I'll be on late tonight. Not just because I really want to talk college football, but because I got all this phone system equipment and I'm going to try it out. So you're going to be the guinea pig and I'm going to be the guinea pig, and it may or may not work, but it should work because I ran enough tests with a few people this afternoon, so it should be good to go. But I want to set it up for tonight. So I will be on later tonight and we'll talk college football, but my objective is to try out the call-in process. That will be much improved, and we'll be back on the mic, and it all sounds much better. The calls sound so much better as well. So we will, again, I'll take the calls that were coming in. Otherwise, man, I am hungry. So going once, going twice. Yes, D-Rock Irish, thank you so much. Just reminding everyone to hit the like button. YouTube likes those likes. I think this algorithm basically comes down to how many people are watching the video, how many likes you get, and how long people are watching. And if those things add up, then you get into those suggested videos, and that's when the videos take off. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Sebastian.
Hey, Sebastian. How are you?
Hey, what's on, Mark? Snowed in here. Yeah, did you work out a sample schedule for the Big Ten using the 2019 records?
I did not. So, so that's going to take some time.
I think. What's that?
So here's my condition on that. I said this at the end of all the videos, that if the videos get to 10,000 views, I will build out the whole schedule. Because that's going to take some time,
sure.
and it's just not.
Releasing it. You said releasing it. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you already.
And it's just not worth the time without some payoff. So anyway, yeah, what you got?
Yeah, I think the 9 games is an issue. One, I mean, you already know this, having 5 home games versus 4 home games for some teams.
Yeah.
And then, making the schedule even out so that there's either 41 wins or 40 wins for your opponent's win record.
Well, that's not a huge
that 9 games is an issue, it seems.
The 4 and 5, I'm with you. I'm with you on the 4 and the 5, the home away. Obviously, it's going to work out year to year because you just alternate. But I agree with you. I don't like that either. And I really wrestled with that, the 9 games versus the 8 games, because I do like the flexibility that the 8 games gives you out of conference to build a better non-conference schedule, too. I do like that.
Yeah. Now, that would be such an issue if you kept the divisions, right? Because one division that you're competing with a spot in the championship game, everybody in that division has the 4 or the 5 home games. But then I was trying to work it out because I like, the concept of the system. But then I was trying to work it out, and it seems, man, if you get, Penn State and you're trying to create a schedule for them, and you're having them play the teams that had a decent record, good record in 2019, that you start encroaching on that 40 or 41 win total pretty quickly. And then all of a sudden, the lower tier teams, the Rutgers and the Marylands, you have to load up, you have to finish their schedules out on those. Or, balance the schedules out on those. And so those teams at the bottom just get hammered. They're always facing the tough teams because in order to balance their schedule out with the tough part, they're getting rocked. And it's the middle tier teams that are sort of playing each other and avoiding a lot of the top tier teams if you work out the schedule. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I'm not debating that because you've worked on it, but I've worked on it in the past, and I'm not exactly following. If everybody's playing a 500 schedule, then what's the?
Just Ohio State, right? You load up Ohio State.
Okay.
So you say they're playing Penn State. We're not even talking about home or away here.
They don't have to play. Why do they have to play Penn State? Do they have to play Penn State every year?
Well, they don't. I mean,
okay.
No, I'm creating a sample schedule. If you don't want them to play, want them to play Penn State. You want them to play Wisconsin.
Are you looking at 2019 standings?
That's right.
Okay, I'll pull it up right now. We can build Ohio State's schedule.
You can build an Ohio State schedule. You don't build a Penn State schedule or Michigan one.
Just give me whoever team you want. It's up to you.
All right, Ohio State.
Ohio State. Okay. You're looking at 2019. All right. Who do you want them to play? I'm saying the only team that they have to play is Michigan. They're rivals.
Right, but you don't.
So, but you want a balanced schedule, right? So
Yeah.
that the top teams are playing also playing the top teams as well. They're not avoiding everybody.
Well, they're
I
going.
mean, you don't want at the end of the year. I mean, that's what we were predicting, right? You want, if you're predicting out of conference, you also want an in conference too. You don't want Ohio State at the end of the year to have avoided, 4 of the top 5 teams.
Sure.
Right, and the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had them playing Penn State,
Okay.
Michigan,
Okay.
Indiana.
Okay.
They avoided Michigan State,
Okay.
played Maryland,
Okay.
and then Wisconsin, I got them.
Okay.
And then I got the Minnesota.
Okay.
But you can't add Iowa.
Okay. Sure. They don't play these teams most of the time anyway. They're only playing 9 out
because
of.
they're not in their division.
Sure.
They're not in their division. But now, since we're doing a division,
Yep.
you sort of want the top teams, you don't want them to not play 4 of the 5 top teams, right?
Well, they can't all play each other. They're not playing each other now. Anyway, go ahead.
No, but that's balanced out by the divisions. That's balanced out by, hey, we didn't play you, but we get to play, the top team in the East plays the top team in the West.
But my objective is not that Ohio State plays the 5 best teams in the Big Ten every year.
And they can't. If you want a 40 or 41 win total for their opponents,
I want a 500. Yeah, I'm not beating up on the best teams in the country to say you need to play the hardest schedules.
And they can't. That's the
Exactly.
point. To get to 40 or 41 wins,
Exactly.
You're going to have, at the end of the season, you're going to have 4 of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten will have totally different schedules.
Sure. Absolutely.
They will not have
it's working
played
out.
each other.
Yes.
Likely. And it's based, not only that, it's basic, probability statistics, right? That 9 choose 13 leaves huge variability right in there, right?
Yep.
So in order to balance it out, they gotta play the Rutgers. They gotta play Northwestern and Purdue in order to only have their win total and their opponent's win total equal 41.
Okay. So who are their last 3 games here? Rutgers, Purdue, and who?
No, you can't add.
You've given me.
You can't add Purdue. You gotta have. If you're gonna have Penn State, Michigan, because that's their rival.
That's the only team they have to play.
Indiana.
In my mind, the only team Ohio State has to play is Michigan. They don't have to play anybody else. They don't have to play anybody else. I'm protecting rivalries.
Right. Yeah. So, but if you want them to play the tougher teams, so at the end of the year, it's not.
They're going to play.
None of us played each other, and
they're going to play.
The 2 top teams have played.
They're going to play some of the tougher teams, but they're not going to play all the tougher teams. Not this.
Right. So that at the end of the year, the 5 teams who are fighting for the 2 spots have totally wildly different schedules.
Okay.
Whereas right now, at least when they're in divisions, they've played, at least the divisional rivals or the divisional teams. Those are similar. So I think you got to keep the divisions. That's why it's looking at. And not only that, because if you don't, like Purdue's, the Northwestern, the Rutgers, they get loaded up on. Unless you only want Ohio State to avoid Penn State and Wisconsin and Minnesota, then you can load up on the Iowas and the Illinois and Nebraskas.
Again, Ohio State's not playing the 4 or 5 best teams in the conference now, and I'm not. It's not my objective that Alabama and Ohio State and those teams always have to play all the best teams
in their division. They are playing the best teams in their division. They're not avoiding.
Sure.
Michigan State when they're good, or Indiana when they're good.
Okay.
They have to. It's not just roll the dice.
So tell me how many games these teams won in 2019 in the conference. I'm sure I know off the top of my head, but I don't want to think about it. Michigan.
Hold on.
Or are they 6-3?
Michigan 6-3. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
going to give you the total as well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Michigan 6, Penn State 7,
7,
right? Yeah. Indiana 5.
5,
Okay. Maryland
1,
1. Wisconsin
7,
7. Minnesota 7.
7.
Rutgers 0.
Okay, hold on. That's 6 games right there, right? That's 6 games, and there's 33 wins total.
Okay.
So right now, the other 3 can add up to either 7 or 8 wins.
Okay. Rutgers 0.
Yep.
Purdue.
Purdue's 3.
Okay. Northwestern what?
So right now,
1.
that's 8 games. You're stuck at right now. It's 8 games. Your opponents have 36 wins. So you either need a 4-win team, which is Illinois, or a 5-win team, which there isn't a leftover 5-win team. So now you're stuck with Illinois.
Illinois. Okay. They won what? 4?
Yep, 4.
Okay. So what's that? 40 or 41, whichever it is.
That's 40.
Okay. So what's the problem?
Well, the problem is if you work that out for the other
Sure.
13 teams
Yeah.
in the conference, it's going to be wildly different. The teams at the end of the season going for the 2 spots in the championship game are going to have wildly different schedules.
Okay. They do now.
You avoided Iowa. If you do it to Penn State, not only does Penn State have to avoid, it won't be able to play 2 of the top 6 teams. And the lower tier teams are getting hammered by the top tier teams. I mean, their schedule looks insanely daunting.
Okay, the 2 teams that play for the Big Ten Championship every year play fairly different schedules now.
But they're in totally different divisions. I mean, the team that you're competing with to win the East has at least a similar schedule for 5 teams, and plus you played them. Whereas the teams you're competing with at the end of the year for one of the spots in the championship game, you're not guaranteed having a similar schedule versus the top 6 or even haven't played them yet.
Yeah, I just don't think that we've got that many rivalry games that have to be played every year and protected.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, there's only one rivalry game, but at the end of the year, 9 games is a huge loop instead of 8. You pretty much need to stick to 8. And 2, having divisions saves you from the mess at the end of the year. And these the huge conference discrepancy for strength of schedule.
No, there's not a discrepancy for strength of schedule. Everybody has the same strength of schedule.
Well, that's if you're saying, hey, playing Ohio State and Rutgers, is the same as playing Indiana and Michigan State. Just because at the end of the year, that's 9 wins. Both of those schedules have 9 wins at the end of the year.
Well, it depends on who you are playing those 2 sets of teams.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're Penn State playing Ohio State and Rutgers, or you're Penn State playing Indiana, Michigan State.
Okay. Well,
you're still playing. You're saying that's the same schedule.
Okay.
It's
so
not. I mean, one's playing Ohio
exactly.
State.
So if you are Penn State in 2019 and you get to play Ohio State and Rutgers, most likely you're losing to Ohio State, but you got a chance to beat them. But most likely you're losing that game like they did, 28-17. But you are no doubt beating Rutgers. They're horrible. They're the worst team in the Power 5. Versus you're playing Indiana and Michigan State, 2 teams that you should beat, but are both capable of beating you.
That's a stretch. Saying, yeah.
That's a stretch?
totally different. That's totally different. Yeah, that's a totally different. I mean, Rutgers has potential to be done that. Yeah.
In 2019, Penn
Just going
State
by the
barely
win schedule,
beat.
just going by the win schedule, having your opponents having the same win total at the end does not mean the schedule similar. You're going to have. I mean, if I was Penn State and I had to choose, I would definitely choose Indiana or Michigan State or Iowa and Illinois instead of Ohio State, Rutgers.
Well, you can say
add
this.
on home.
You could say the same thing now with everybody in the Big Ten and say nobody wants to play Ohio State because it's an automatic loss. But somebody's got to play them. 8 teams have to play them, or 9 teams have to play them.
Yeah, but you say that for Penn State or Michigan. Would you rather play Michigan State and Illinois, or would you rather play Penn State and Purdue?
Maryland has to play Ohio. Maryland's relegated to playing Ohio State every year. Why isn't Illinois relegated to having to play Ohio State every year? At least this would balance it out to where they both have to play
Illinois
Ohio State
gets to
roughly.
play Wisconsin every year. Illinois gets to play Minnesota every year.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, you're going to have these. I mean, one of the consequences of having these huge conferences at the end, and if you do have divisions, you're going to have these insanely wacky discrepancies in certain schedules, just like you had this year.
Mm-hmm.
These huge conferences that only played 5 regular season games. And at the end of the year, we go, or 6 regular season games. These 2 teams look like, just by their end of the season records, even though they play wildly different records or schedules, right? I mean, they might as well be in different conferences.
Yeah. Again, I'm not seeing the difference between with what's going on now and the wild range of schedules.
What's going on now is that you're taking the
at least
team
this is
that
equitable.
at least showed on the field that they were the better team in the West Division getting to play. Whereas if you do it in divisions and you go to these 9 games, you could have 2 teams with, that one team played only two opponents with a winning record versus another team that played only 4 home games against really tough, a much tougher schedule. And we're going to put them in the championship game against each other.
So if it makes you feel better, I've done this in the past, but kept the divisions and did the same thing. But I kept the divisions. But I don't like Nebraska playing 3 teams from the Big Ten East that went 20-7 the previous season, and Purdue's playing 3 teams that went 10-17.
Yeah, that's horrible as well. And in order to if you want to actually reduce that chance of that happening, you go to 8 games with 2 interdivisional conference games. Because 2-7, the variability in that's a lot lower than 3-7. You know what I'm saying? Irrespective of whether they're home games or away games. Now, if you keep the divisions and you play 3 interdivisional games, then one's playing 2 home games against the other division, whereas the other one's playing 1.
All right. Very good.
The odd scheduling, odd games, and odd interdivisional games really makes it an unequal scheduling. It really throws it for a loop.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. 14 teams in a conference is an even number, but it doesn't even really work well. Yeah. You want 10 teams in a conference or 12 teams in a conference and 8-game schedules. Yeah. Or everyone plays everyone.
Even 16, but then you never play interdivisional. I mean, at least then everybody's playing everybody in the, one division. But yeah.
Yeah, and you're playing a 7-game conference season.
18 then.
Yeah.
Then, 18 or 20, right?
Then I don't even know why you're calling it the same conference at that point if you're not going to see anyone from the other side. So, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I appreciate it. Have a good night.
All right.
All right. Good stuff. 6 o'clock Eastern time. Think we're going to shut it down. We thank you so much for the contribution there, TFJ Boxing. Basically just laying the wood there. All right. Good stuff. Just wanted to survey everyone on college football scheduling. I believe it can be done much better. Much better. Not that there are, again, because you can't predict the future, you can't make it perfectly equitable. And there needs to be something worked out with the 8 games or the 9 game seasons in conference. The reason I like the 9 games is just because, man, to have a 14-team conference and you only play 8 conference games and you're missing 5 opponents, and the way it's set up right now, you see a team every 6 years is just, again, I'll say this one more time, how it can be defended that in the SEC, we can say the same thing about the ACC. What is so special about Texas A&M and South Carolina, or Mississippi State and Kentucky, or Ole Miss and Vandy, that they will play 60 consecutive years? They will play the next 60 years in a row, 60 times. 60 times. Texas A&M and South Carolina. And Alabama and Georgia will play 10 times. So, all right, good stuff. Appreciate it. Yeah, see, Lenny, the deal is, 46 watching, 59 likes, over 100%. See, the likes come from people that have been watching previously. So, there you go. DeAndre, good to have you on here. We are wrapping it up right now. Appreciate everybody jumping on there. SEC Dog, I'm the dumbest in the comments section, according to the voice of college football. Woohoo! Never said that, SEC Dog. Love having you here. I'm just saying that when you jump on here and say that Ohio State never travels. Washington, Cal, Oregon, USC, UCLA. Those are pretty major trips. I don't know where else they can go unless they're going to start playing in Australia. So anyway, so you guys, I'm coming back, most likely going to come back late night tonight because I'm going to try. I want to test out the call-in system. All right, want to test out the call-in system tonight. Otherwise, we'll be back with Pigskin Pete Monday at noon Eastern time, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. In the meantime, enjoy the videos. Yes, I talked about those, Rod. I left out Miami, but yeah, 2011, USC, Oklahoma.